He's 6'9".
Hi, chat. Okay, first things first. We're not watching Rotten Mango, right? Well, we will, but first we're watching The Gruesome Serial Killer That Outsmarted Everyone at Kemper. They call me Chris. So let me connect. Get ready for everything. Okay, should be everything. Right.
He's 6'9", has an IQ of 145, and he was charming enough to earn the trust of everyone around him, including the police. But behind that calm, intelligent facade was one of the most cold-blooded serial killers in American history. Edmund Kemper murdered 10 people, and the way he spoke about those crimes later will chill you to your core. So this is a story of one of the most intelligent, cunningest, and largest serial killer in history. And trust me, the deeper we go, the more disturbing it'll get. Crime, conspiracy, cults, serial killers, and murder. All things that I love to consume, and I know you do too, you sick, twisted, beautiful, intellectually minded freak. And yeah, I'm standing up today, okay? I'm feeling amped. I'm feeling out. Now I'm upset. I have a weird amount of energy today. Sorry if I bop around. I don't know, I really hate this guy. I really don't like this guy. He's like not my favorite serial killer, but the one that makes me the most upset. The one that just, I don't know why, but he's up there. One I want to fight personally. Couldn't though, because he's literally 6'9", terrifying beast of a man. But without further ado, let's get into it. I'm gonna stop rambling. So without further ado, let's unbuckle our seatbelts, go Mach 5 down the highway, slam on the brakes, and bust through this windshield into this massive serial killer together.
Sorry, I was trying to get a Jolly Rancher out of its plastic thing. Yeah, wrapper. That's what it's called, yeah, wrapper.
Edmund Emil Kimmer was born in Burbank, California on December 18th, 1948. And he weighed a whopping 13 pounds! And now it doesn't end well for his mother in all of this, and it turns out didn't start out really well either for her. She damn near got ripped in half right at the beginning. But anyway, he was the middle child of 3 children, and the only son born to Clarnell Elizabeth Kemper, who was a native to Montana, and Edmund Emil Kemper Jr., his father, who was actually a World War II veteran who, after the war, tested nuclear weapons at the Pacific Proving Grounds before returning to California, where he would eventually work as an electrician. And Clarnell, Edmund's mother, often complained about her husband's menial electrician job. And Edmund Jr., Ed Kemper's father, later stated that, quote-unquote,
"Slewer slide missions in wartime and the atomic bomb testings were nothing compared to living with Clarnell.
You know, his wife. And he would go on to say that
She affected me more than 396 days and nights of fighting on the front did."
Damn! If that doesn't tell you who Clarnell is like a person, though, I don't know what will. She's, not fun to be around, to say the least. Poor guy would rather be on the front lines and have dinner with his wife. So it's not starting out great for little Ed Kemper, or should I say Big Ed Kemper, because Ed Kemper, being that 13-pound baby and all, was a head taller than all his peers by the age of 4. He was just a giant baby man. And Ed's childhood parallels that of many serial killers. His parents, Clarnell and E.E. Kemper Jr., had a very stormy marriage, as we know. And they would actually separate when Ed was only 9 years old and divorce 4 years later after that. And Ed actually really loved his dad, so this did a number on him when he left. So he would just pine and pine for his real father through a succession of stepfathers, because Clarnell got around. And it didn't last long because, as we know, most men would rather be on the front lines than go to a movie with her, you know? So Clarnell would pack up the kids and move to Helena, Montana, and Ed's mother and sisters would just berate and belittle Ed on a daily basis. And as Ed would grow older, his gem of a mother would banish him to the basement. So he wouldn't have a room. He would just have to literally live in the basement anytime he was in the house. Because she considered him sharing a room with his sisters unseemly, which, to be fair, was probably the right call. You know, she's not Mother of the Year, but she made the right call there, Steve. And his mom thought this specifically because Ed reportedly loved to rip the heads off his sister Barbie dolls and also do obscene things with them. And he's like a young kid at this point. And since he was growing rapidly, even when he was a preteen, which he was at this point, and Clarnell constantly reminded him of this and made him feel bad about this. But this is what made him so scary to Clarnell and his sisters, is that he's just this giant rage monster. And instead of his mom, you know, getting him help, the help that he clearly needed, she just thought, you know, let's just belittle and trap a rapidly growing giant violent monster in the basement, you know? What could go wrong? Turns out a lot. But although Clarnell seems kind of like the villain right now, which she partly is, for sure, not so Lil Eddie was a very difficult child, to say the least. Because Ed reportedly could not sustain friendships, and he basically thought that he was above all of his peers. Because he was very smart, but a little too smart, you know? A little narcissistic, which, you know, first ingredient in the serial killer pot of stew. And another little ingredient is that he also liked to torture and kill animals. Let's just put a few in there. That's, you know, serial killer 101. So while most kids were playing catch and playing patty cake, Big Ed was killing cats. Specifically, 2 of his family-owned cats. And one he had strangled and buried in the yard, and the other he had completely dismembered then hid in his closet. And he would also place the head of the cat on an altar of sorts, and his mother would find it later on. So, you know, the reasons for putting him in the basement kind of start to add up, but I mean, mental health and all that kind of stuff wasn't as prevalent as it is at this time. So can we blame Clarnell? I mean, you know, nature, nurture, I don't know. If I've been saying Carnell, it's Clarnell. I apologize. And at this point in his life, he would entertain the dark fantasies he was having, which combined and violence from a very early age. And in interviews after Ed's eventual incarceration, Ed would recall his mother keeping him in the basement. He said that he believed that he must have been a constant prickly reminder to his mother. He said he hated her, but often spoke as if he understood her motives and behavior.
My mother and my sisters, or my sisters themselves, would go up to bed upstairs, where I used to go to bed upstairs. I had to go down to the basement, and an 8-year-old child had a tough time differentiating the reason in that. Why am I going to the basement? I'm going to hell, they're going to heaven.
And in different interviews, he described his fear and anger growing up, along with things he envisioned doing. And he said that he killed the family cat, placing its head on an altar, and he felt empowered after persuasively lying about it to his family. And he would basically eventually hone this ability to present a public facade that people trusted, while his private world contained much darker ideas. So it's like he was in constant training to be the ultimate serial killer. And by the time he was 10, he was already thinking about females in violent sexual terms. He was basically just developing a violent inner world of his own. He would say, quote unquote,
When I was in school, I was called a chronic daydreamer, and I saw a counselor twice during junior high and high school, and that was very routine. They didn't ask me a lot of questions about myself, and that was probably the most violent fantasy time I was off into.
And stories from his sisters involved disconcerting memories, to say the least. One of his sisters goaded him to kiss his teacher, and this teacher was one that Ed had a crush on. And Ed apparently said that if he did, he'd have to kill her, you know, as 12-year-olds do. And he would go on to stalk that teacher with the thoughts of killing her, but luckily he wouldn't go through with it. And instead, that's when Kemper would slaughter his own pet cats, as we know, and stuff the remains in his closet, which his mother would find. So again, instead of getting him any sort of professional help, his mother would take him out of the basement and ship him off to Los Angeles to live with his father and his new stepmother, which Ed did kind of like, because he missed his dad, he loved his dad, so he was actually kind of excited to live with his dad and to get away from his mom and sisters who constantly belittled him. But his dad and stepmom's reaction to him was not ideal. It was kind of the same as his mother's, because his strangeness and hugeness was threatening, and they quickly were just at their wits' end for something to do with him. So, completely fed up, Kemper Jr., which is Ed's dad, shipped Ed off again to his grandparents. So Ed's just going through multiple family homes, just not being wanted by anyone. Like, way to stir the stew, way to heat the pot up. You know, like, what? Just not good. Not good for Ed. Ed's already having a lot of trouble at this point. I'm not giving him any sympathy because he's a literal monster, but the nurture is definitely a causation in this factor for sure, on top of the nature, because that's there. We know that. So Maud and Edmund Kemper Sr., which are Ed's grandparents, lot of Eds, had a 17-acre farm in North Fork, California. And Ed would be brought there during the Christmas holidays of 1963. And Ed was not happy about being left at his grandparents' farm when the holidays ended, but he would begin school anyway and seemed to actually make a lot of progress at this point. And his teachers at Sierra Joint Union High School in nearby Toll House, California, found him actually just quiet and that he kept to himself. He wasn't really bothering anybody. He wasn't doing anything nefarious at this point. That we know. You know? So he didn't really cause much trouble to anyone at this time, and he made average grades, even though he probably could have easily made really, really good grades. He just didn't really care. And he drew really no bad attention to himself, apart from his massive size. So time would go on, and he would kind of be on the up, you know? But then things would get tense at home, at his grandparents' home. But it was still bearable, because they would find Ed, again, odd and unsettling at times, as his mother and father did, but he would keep busy and out of the way with his dog and a .22 rifle given to him by Kemper Sr., his grandfather, which is just, you know, yeah, man, give a gun to an animal slaughtering giant psycho child. What could go wrong? What do I know, though? I don't have kids. So anyway, Ed would go on to shoot rabbits and gophers, and he would also shoot birds, even though his grandmother told him he cannot shoot birds. And by kind of letting his aggression out by, you know, quote unquote hunting, it would evidently contain his anger to this one outlet for a little while. And at the end of the school year, he would actually return to his mother and sisters in Helena to spend the summer. But within 2 weeks, he was back at Grandma and Grandpa's farm because his mom could not take it. She just really didn't like Ed. So when he returned back to his grandparents, being rejected again from his mother, his grandmother commented that he had completely regressed at this point. He seemed more sullen and ominous, and now he wasn't in school anymore because he was done. And he didn't have a whole lot to do at this point either but hang out on the farm and continue his various hobbies of, killing animals with his .22 rifle. And Ed personally found his grandparents to just be nags and bores, and his violent fantasies would return full tilt. And this time, his fantasies would star Maud, his grandmother. For example, he would imagine Maud in the outhouse, and he would shoot it full of holes in his imagination, you know, with the gun he was gifted by his grandfather. Great gift, by the way. That's sarcasm. And although those were fantasies, he would even go as far as to line her up while she was obviously unaware in his rifle sights. And he would think about what it would feel like to kill her. So as tension at the farm started to mount, his grandmother grew very nervous, which is totally fair. I mean, she's got this, you know, massive, angry grandson who has a weapon. I can't even imagine. And he has nowhere else to go. So she would take Kemper Sr., her husband, who's Ed's grandfather's, .45 caliber pistol with her on her outings, for fear that it would fall into Ed's hands, which I don't know if she forgot that he had a .22, but I feel like she took it partly for protection for herself and partly just to have another gun out of the reach of Ed. But on August 27th, 1964, Ed would sit at the kitchen table with his grandmother, and they would be going over proofs from a children's book that she was writing, because she was a writer. And she would look up and she would notice that Ed had a very odd stare and a frightening look that she had seen many, many times before. Just a 30-yard Kubrick stare, just a... And she would tell him, like, hey, stop it. Like, stop what you're doing right now. You're freaking me out. And after a moment, Ed would just pick up his gun, whistle, and leave out the door with his dog, saying that he was headed out to go shoot some gophers, as he did many times before. And Maud would warn him, again like she did many times before, not to shoot any birds. And she would just return her attention back to her work as Ed left. But Ed would turn around upon exiting the house, and he would watch her through the screen door. And her back was to him at this point, and that's when he would raise his rifle, take aim, and shoot at Maud's head. He would fire once, and Maud would slump onto the table completely. And then he would fire once more, hitting her in the back. Now, inside the house again, he would stab her multiple times on top of already shooting her. Just an aggressive, violent kill. Like, just pure frenzy rage. Because at this point, she was already dead. And then he would wrap her head in a towel and drag her body into a bedroom. And within a few minutes, Kemper Sr., his grandfather, would return home from buying groceries. And as Ed Kemper Sr. began to unload the truck, Ed took aim with his rifle again and shot him in the back of the head. And Ed, at this point, was immediately upset. Not only because he realized what he had done, but because he knew he'd be caught. Because his grandparents weren't the sorts to take off all of a sudden for an extended vacation. So even if he hid the bodies, his family and friends would notice that they went missing immediately. So not knowing what else to do, he would call Mommy Dearest in Montana, who would advise him to call the sheriff. Surprisingly, he did. And then he would obviously be taken into questioning. And soon he confessed to both murders, saying he'd often thought of killing his grandmother and that he basically just killed his grandfather in an act of mercy to protect him from seeing his dead wife and possibly having a heart attack. How sweet.
Yeah, how sweet, honey.
So you killed him because you thought that he would die anyway? It's just, it doesn't make any sense. It's basically just psychotic, selfish, insane behavior. So Ed would be incarcerated in juvenile hall while the California Youth Authority decided what to do with him. And a court-appointed psychiatrist diagnosed Ed as paranoid and psychotic. We knew that, thanks. And the Youth Authority committed him to Atascadero State Hospital, and he would enter the facility on December 6th, 1964. And at this point, he was not even 16 years old yet. So off to Atascadero State Hospital he would go, and definitely where he should have stayed. But we know he didn't. So Ed would take an extensive amount of tests while there and began to gain insight, if not into the nature of his own crime, into what others thought of the crime. It's like Ed Kemper was always studying, again, how to become a better criminal. So he never accepted actual responsibility for his crime, saying it had been beyond his control, but he worked hard at learning the language of treatment and appearing recovered. Basically, the guy was an Oscar-winning actor, essentially, because he would actually go on to even work in the psychology laboratory and help administer tests to other patients. And by work, I mean he was still a patient, but he would basically assist. And he took a lot of pride in doing this job, which his doctors interpreted as a very good sign. He's rehabilitating. Wow, he's turned a new leaf. No, you idiots, he's Meryl Streep. But because at the time, sociopaths, which Ed had been diagnosed as, were usually reluctant and uncooperative to work with. But Ed always seemed really eager to do his best, so he was just too smart, basically. Because again, I know I've said this before, but he had a genius IQ of 145. Just a recipe for a final boss serial killer. So he would thrive in his new hospital environment, learning how to be a better serial killer. And he would make some friends along the way, including a serial rapist who shared stories of his own crimes with Ed. And all of these just up stories would leave a massive impression on teenage Ed, and his rapidly developing awareness would become inextricably linked with domination and violence. Just classic 1960s mental health care, you know? So Ed's violent fantasies would become more and more intricate and intense. I mean, he's just sitting in a hospital, like, not being treated because everyone thinks he's better, basically, so what else does he have to do but just think about what he's gonna do when he gets out. And he would take note of what the incarcerated rapists around him had done wrong. They had been caught because they hadn't been smart and left witnesses and evidence. They would attack women that they knew, or they would attack in too public a place. So over time, he would just file this information in the corner of his mind basement dungeon, only to go down there and get this information after he was let out. So obviously, he was smart enough to know that he couldn't share these evolving violent fantasies with his doctors, so he didn't, and he would just continue to behave as a model inmate. And as the icing on the get out of jail cake, he even claimed religious conversion and took to looking up biblical references that he had heard. So with this Oscar-winning bullshit performance, he would be released on December 18th, 1969, when he was 21. But Ed, being inside for most of his formidable years, was a bit of a shell shock when he walked out into the long-haired hippie culture that had emerged from the 60s. And especially because Ed just wasn't that kind of guy. He was kind of a square. With his short hair and serial killer glasses and neat mustache, he actually wished to be a law enforcement officer. But his hopes, fortunately, I think, would be dashed. Because in addition to minimum height requirements, both the local state police had maximum height limits, which is so weird to me. Like, wouldn't you want a giant hulking man on your force? I don't really understand that. But anyway, he didn't get on the force, which is for the best. So alas, Ed was a little bit too tall to be a cop. So to cater to his disappointment, he would buy a motorcycle. And with it, he could at least feel like a cop. This guy always wanted to cosplay as a cop. But meanwhile, he actually did really well with his studies, and after 3 months, he was paroled for another 18 months. And his doctors at Atascadero had recommended strongly that he not be returned to his mother, who had actually relocated to Santa Cruz, California. But against their advice, the youth authority would send him straight to her. So Ed would go home to his ever-loving mother, Clarnell, who at this point was twice divorced now, just a charmer. And at this point in her life, she had held the position as an administrative assistant on the University of California at Santa Cruz campus. And Clarnell, outside of her home, was actually very liked, and she allegedly enjoyed her life a lot now with her son away. But now he was back. So upon Ed's return home, the fights would wake up the neighbors daily, and she would still harass and belittle and just blame him for everything. And Ed would actually say later in an interview after he got caught,
"My mother and I started right in on horrendous battles. Just horrible battles. Violent, vicious. I've never been in such vicious verbal battle with anyone. It would go to fists with a man, but this was my mother, and I couldn't stand the thought of my mother and I doing these things. She insisted on it, and just over stupid things. I remember one roof raiser was over whether I should have my teeth cleaned."
So obviously not wanting to be home ever, Ed would seek solace at the Jury Room, which was a local bar frequented by off-duty police officers. And he was obviously still very fascinated by law enforcement and was incredibly smart and knew now how to converse with people very, very well. So he would naturally befriend the local police. And he would be very well respected by him, and they even gave him a nickname, Big Ed, very fitting. So Ed would continue to make friends with the local police, but since he couldn't be one of them, and since he wanted to avoid his mother at all costs, he got a job. So Ed took various positions as a laborer, and finally secured one at the Divisions of Highways, which enabled him to move out of his mother's home and into an apartment at Alameda, which he shared with a friend. But still, he said later that his mother would still continue to berate and belittle him. Guy can't catch a break. And little did she know how much she was poking the literal bear. So Ed's job would be good, but it would be somewhat short-lived because he actually wrecked his motorcycle twice. And since it wasn't his fault, he would actually receive $15,000, which is about $106,000 in today's money, in a settlement in a civil lawsuit that he filed against the other driver. So the Division of Highways gave him some time off to recuperate his broken left arm, and because of the second accident as well. And with the out-of-court settlement, he would buy a car, specifically a 1969 Ford Galaxy that looked very much like an unmarked police vehicle. How convenient. So the guy was, like I said, basically cosplaying as a cop for his own nefarious reasons, we will see. So he would go all in with his car and equipped it with a transmitter and a microphone and a large whip antenna. And he would begin to pick up hitchhikers. Don't hitchhike. I will say it till I die. And his specific targets were petite, pretty female hitchhikers. And at this point, he wasn't killing anybody. He wasn't even hurting anybody. He was just wanting to see how they would react to him. He was literally
Testing the
studying
waters.
them. So when he could finally do it, it would be perfect. Because these are the patterns he did in the mental hospital. He figured out how to talk to people, how I'd be able to get away with a crime if I wanted to, how to trick the doctors, how to trick the police. He's just, unfortunately, incredibly smart. So he would learn to make these hitchhikers trust him fully, basically just using them as his test subjects. So he would deliver them safely to their destination, and privately, he indulged in his violent fantasies, imagining what he would do to them. So now that he amassed all of this knowledge of acquiring a victim with zero consequences, he began to outfit his car for his future violent plans. So the antenna came off, and the passenger door was rigged to keep it from being opened from the inside.
Oh,
Just
that's
my
wonderful.
worst nightmare. It just reminds me of Death Proof, that scene where she gets in the car, the first girl gets in the car, and then she can't open it. Oh my god, it's so scary.
Well, Pam, which way you going? Left or right?
Right.
That's too bad.
So he'd also pack plastic bags, knives, guns, and a blanket into his trunk. And then Ed would hit the road and start picking up girl after girl, picking each girl up as kind of an experiment, just waiting for the right girl and the right opportunity. Like, this guy was extremely patient. Ed was the definition of an organized serial killer. So more than a year of picking up girls and letting them go would pass by. But on May 7th, 1972, Ed's moment finally came. Marianne and Anita were students at Fresno State College, and they were hitchhiking to Stanford University after a couple of days at Berkeley. So Ed would roll up and offer them a ride. And after driving for an hour, he managed to reach a secluded wooded area near Alameda, with which he was very familiar with because he worked at the highway department. And he would do all this without alerting his
sister.
passengers
Ew.
at all, and just saying that he had to change directions because he went the wrong way.
I
Just
thought it'd be a
perfectly
peaceful day today,
practiced
you know?
and perfectly and unfortunately executed. So after driving them around for a bit, he actually took his gun out from under the seat and pulled off into a deserted area.
When that gun was pulled out, I launched it out. I had it under my leg, out of sight, parallel to my leg in the seat.
And very quickly he would stop and put Anita in the trunk of his car and turn his attention toward Marianne. He would quickly handcuff her and then lay her across the back seat face down. And that's when he would put a plastic bag over her head, and then he would attempt to strangle her with a length of terry cloth. But Marianne would bite a hole into the bag and the cloth would snap. So frustrated, Ed would pull out his knife and just stab her repeatedly. And eventually, after stabbing her multiple times, he would also slash her throat. And that's when he would go to the trunk and remove Anita. And that's when he would grab an even larger knife and he began to stab her as well. Just heartbreak, just awful, like f***ing monster.
I just killed a young woman. I slammed down the lid of the trunk. She isn't dead. She's dying.
But after he was done, he would put the bodies into his trunk and he would drive around.
Tell that you
the
watched
bodies
this
in his
rendering
car,
video.
just deciding what he should do next. And eventually, he brought Marianne's
Oh,
body
so
into
did
his
you watch?
apartment,
Yeah, I did.
where he would undress her and fully dissect her. And he would
Ew.
also behead Anita's body. And Marianne's body would be buried in the plastic bag he had used to suffocate her. But he would keep both of their heads for a while, eventually disposing of them in a ravine. And Marianne's would be found and identified in August, and neither Anita's head nor her body were ever found. Which is just, again, just
That's
soul-crushing, just heartbreaking. Like, I can't even imagine the family. Like, my heart just goes out to the families and obviously the victims as well, but... So the girls' families would shortly realize that the girls went missing, and they would both file a missing persons report.
How
Though
is
it was
it
really hard to get the
so
police to
far?
pursue this case in any sort of serious way, because there were so many runaways and transient in the Bay Area at this time. And obviously, no one suspected polite, clean-cut friend of the police, Edmund Kemper. So he would just continue to prowl. And on the evening of September 14th, 1972, he would pick up Aiko Ku, a 15-year-old dancer who was on her way to her dance class. She was waiting for the bus at the bus stop, but it was kind of taking too long and she needed to get to dance class, so she decided to hitchhike. And that's when Ed would
My
roll up,
rendering.
seeing a very obvious opportunity. So Aiko would get in, but it would not take her long to catch on to his plan. She would actually see his gun and start to panic. And with Ed, quick thinking, he would convince her that he was actually just planning to use the gun on himself, and that if she didn't try to signal police or passerby, he would not harm her. So having absolutely no choice because she was in a moving vehicle with a literal psychopathic giant, she reluctantly agreed to just stay in the car. And that's when Ed would drive off into the mountains and turn off the main road and park out of sight. And after Ed parked, he would tape Aiko's mouth shut and also try to suffocate her with his thumb and index finger in her nostrils. And she would fight with her life back, but she would unfortunately go unconscious, only to wake up moments later again. And that's when Ed would begin to suffocate
best
her
version as the
again.
first
And this
laser.
time,
Oh, so it's
continuing
ugly.
until she completely
Okay.
stopped breathing. And that's when he would remove her from the car, lay her on the ground, and have his way with her body. And with her own scarf, he would also begin to strangle her, and when he was absolutely sure that she was dead, he put her body in the trunk and drove away from the scene like nothing happened.
I don't believe
So again,
you.
he would drive around just trying to figure out what to do, and that's when he would stop at a local bar. And he would just have a couple beers, like literally nothing happened. But before he would
What a
actually go
sick man.
into the bar,
Very
he would
beautiful
pop the
10-10.
trunk in a public open parking lot to make sure that she was really dead. And in his words, to admire her. Just
Ew.
disgusting. And he would recount this moment in a later interview saying, quote unquote,
I suppose I was standing there looking. I was doing one of those triumphant things too, admiring my work and admiring her beauty, and I might say admiring my catch, like a fisherman.
it makes my stomach turn. But after leaving the bar,
Just
he
my
actually went
art
back
is
to his
semi-realism.
mother's house. And later that
Well,
night,
kinda
similar
trying
to
to do
his
that
other
too.
victim, he would bring Aiko's body into his apartment
definitely more
and place it
stylized.
on the bed. And he would dissect her just as he did Mary Ann and Anita. And he would dispose of her head and hands in different locations from the rest of her body as well. And very little ever turned up, and her disappearance was not thought to be related to Mary Ann and Anita at all, because there was very little investigation going on in the first place at this point. So 4 months would go by, and other victims from other killers were found in the Bay Area, which, like, leave the Bay Area. So bodies
Or
were
I say
popping
one
up
thing
left
good,
and
then
right,
bad
and
thing good
obviously
again.
police concerns were aroused, but Big Ed was under no suspicion of any
can
of the
give you
killings,
a
so he would
zinc.
just continue. So on January 8th, 1973,
guess.
Ed would buy a .22 caliber automatic pistol, even though he was forbidden to use any firearms given his prior crimes. But he had no trouble with this purchase in spite of his record, but he did fear that eventually the police might catch on to the fact that he was in illegal possession of a handgun. But regardless, he would hit the road with his gun and his car and continue his hunt. So Ed went driving around Cabrillo College campus when he picked up 18-year-old student Cynthia Ann, who was Cindy Shaw, and he would drive her into the hills near Watsonville, where he would force her into the trunk and shot her with his new gun. And at this point, Ed had actually recently moved back in with his mother, so he brought her body to the duplex in Aptos and into his room there. So when Clarnell left for work the next morning,
this guy
Ed
is
would have
crazy.
intercourse with Cindy's corpse. And
Ew.
then he would go on to dissect her in the bathtub, taking great care afterward to wash away all traces of anything that he had done. And then he would
Everybody's
remove the
village was
bullet
very
from her
good at
skull
doing
and then
anything
bury the
about
head
that.
in his
Okay.
mother's backyard. And he would even say that he actually buried the heads to be looking up to his mother's window,
Oh, that
like her
is so
bedroom
creepy.
window, just for an extra you, basically, which is just beyond up. And later he would throw all the body parts which he had in plastic bags off of the cliff. And this time, however, the body was discovered within 24 hours. So Ed took notice to this, noting that he got a little bit sloppy, but this wouldn't worry him enough to stop what he was doing. At this point, he basically just thought he was invincible, but he knew now that he had to be really, really careful. And within a month, he was ready to kill again. So now we're having a way quicker cooldown period. So on the night of February 5th, 1973, Ed and his mommy had a massive fight, and Ed would storm out of the apartment, keyed up and ready to kill. But with heightened suspicion of a serial killer preying on hitchhikers, specifically in the Santa Cruz area, students have been advised to accept rides only from cars with university stickers on them, which is just so dumb in hindsight, because like, if the serial killer watches the news and knows that he needs a sticker, he's just gonna go get a sticker. Like, I
But
don't
your drawing is very bright, a lot like values and no dark values, so it's gonna make it more of a 2D look
so
without
Kemper,
dark values.
not being,
I didn't know that. Okay,
idiot,
cool,
was
cool.
able to obtain a sticker, as his mother worked at the UC Santa Cruz campus. So Ed would get his sticker and he would go to the campus to hunt. And unfortunately, 23-year-old Rosalind Heather Thorpe and 20-year-old Alice Helen Allison Liu would be on the UCS.
When I did like realism, like for art class and stuff like that, it was just more like, okay, this is what you're gonna do and copy. So I didn't really know that. Nice. Okay, interesting. I guess I'll try that in the next piece, because yeah. I'll try it. I'll definitely try it. Or maybe I'll try it out in the hair or something, but yeah.
Campus
Thank
that
you.
fateful night. So he would pick up Rosalind first and engage in conversation with her. And in a short while, he stopped for another hitchhiker, which was Alice. And she had no trepidation about getting in the car, especially with Rosalind already being in the car and having the UC Santa Cruz parking sticker promptly displayed on his car as well. So they would ride around for a while, and this time, Ed didn't even stop the car to start his killing. He would draw Rosalind's attention to a lovely view off the passenger side, and as she looked out the window, he would slow down and he would draw his .22 and shoot her directly in the head. And Alice was in the back seat, just horrified and freaking out. So Ed would quickly turn around and point his gun at Alice in the back seat and fire several.
But if you're doing a stylish drawing, the darker values can still work, but if you're going for some semi-realism, you're gonna need dark values and some sort of value hierarchy. Only if you're going for some semi-realism. I would like to go for semi-realism.
Times. And unlike Rosalind, she didn't die immediately. So he would shoot her
like I
again
said, I'm not
point
good
blank once he got out of
at
town.
rendering.
And that would unfortunately kill her. So after he killed both the girls, he would pull off into a cul-de-sac and quickly transfer the bodies into the trunk. And then he would
But I
go
will
stop for
definitely
gas, and
take
then he
that
would go to his mother's
into
duplex, which
consideration.
he
Thank
quickly
you.
left again, claiming he needed cigarettes. And once outside the apartment, he pulled the car to the street, opened the trunk, and beheaded both the bodies. And that following
was he
day,
beheading?
brought Alice's body inside and would also have sex with it in
come
his
on.
room. And he also brought in Rosalind's head so he could remove the bullet that had been lodged inside of it, as he had done
what a
before
loser.
with Cindy's body. And
He
then
took
he
our
would drive
classes
away
in
to
school,
Santa
yeah.
Cruz to dispose of most of the body parts, then on to Pacifica to get rid of the heads and hands. So all during this.
But bro, I'm gonna be honest, I never learned color theory. No, I did. Like, they taught it, like, so many times, but it never, like, stuck into my brain, so I need to, like, review it every single time I have to do something. So it's, like, annoying. I did too in middle school, but it was more like a craft art class more than anything. Oh, gotcha. Oh, yeah, we were actually gonna move into it more, but, you know, I essentially dropped out for, like, 2 weeks, and then I started homeschooling, but yeah. Color theory is a weird one for me, for real. All I know, the thing is the...
Clarinet.
Not this, like with the wheel, that, like a good... It's such an abstract thing to... I know, for real. It's like, it doesn't stick in my little brain. It just... like... So, like, opposite, like, go to the opposite side and, like, get a shade from there or something like that. But other than that, I'm like, eh? I don't, like, yes, that's it. Like, I'm so bad at color theory.
Michelle, Ed's mother, never showed any suspicion of Ed committing these heinous crimes.
Yeah, I would
and she
thought
probably
same.
didn't suspect that she'd become one of his victims as well. So on Easter weekend, about a month after the killings of Rosalind and Alice, he decided the time had come to get rid of her. It was time to rid of the
What was even
real
harder was
source
color
of all of his
relativity.
anger, hate,
I
and
bet.
just violent rage he had pent up after all of these years. So he would wait all night while his mother was in her room sleeping, carefully considering what he was about to do. So at 5:15 a.m., Ed would grab a hammer from the kitchen and he would go to her bedroom. And he would
With a
stand
ham-
over her
Oh,
for a
jeez.
moment and then swiftly strike her once. Very, very hard. And then for whatever up reason, he would also slash her throat. So within 60 seconds, he had killed and beheaded his mom. And he would
Oh, I
also
know that guy.
remove her larynx in
Oh,
the
wait.
process.
Marco
The larynx
Bucci?
being the hollow tube
Okay,
in your
no, I
throat,
don't.
otherwise known as
If you don't
the
like it,
voice
okay.
box. And he would also try to put her voice box in the garbage disposal, but the machine spat it back out.
Ew.
Which Ed
I'm gonna write
later
it down.
would find darkly appropriate and unsurprising, because he basically, in later interviews, would just say she would never shut up. So that's why I did it. It's just so f***ed up and so, oh my god. It's just a f***ing nightmare. It's like a f***ing horror movie.
But I hit her in the head with a hammer. She was senseless. And sadly, some people have analogized that
It's
to
the
slaughter
color
of
guy
a
for
cow.
artist.
So
Okay,
that's when
thank
he
you so
would hide her
much.
body in the
Hopefully
closet
it'll
and try to
stick.
clean up a bit, and then he would just leave the house. So that afternoon, after pondering what he had just done, decided that if someone else was to find his dead mother, then suspicion might point away from him. Because at this point, no one suspected Ed of doing anything. He wasn't any sort of suspect of anything. So it
BRB got
wasn't
its
a
dishes to do.
terrible
Oh,
plan,
it
especially
was.
with people
Sorry.
getting
Yeah,
murdered
okay.
left and right now in their area. It wouldn't be far-fetched to assume that somebody came into the house and murdered his mother. So after figuring out his plan, Ed would return back to the duplex and he would call Sarah Haylett, a friend of his mother's, to invite her to dinner. And he wasn't able to reach her immediately, and he actually started to panic a bit. But unluckily for Sarah, she got back to him around 5 p.m. And he would tell her that he was doing a surprise dinner for his mother and that she should come over for dinner as well. So Sarah would say, yep, I'm on my way, and she would head over there. And as soon as she walked in, Ed would strangle her immediately.
Oh,
First
Jesus.
manually, and then with the scarf that he had obtained from Aiko, one of his previous victims. And then he would remove Sarah's clothes and put her on his bed. And sometime that night, he attempted to have you-know-what with her corpse. Just f***ing sick f***ing bastard. And on Easter Sunday morning, he left town driving east in Sarah's car. But he started to realize being in Sarah's car would look suspicious as hell. So he rented another car and dropped off Sarah's car at the gas station, telling the attendant that it needed repair. So he would drive for 18 hours, stopping only for gas and sodas. And then he would be stopped for speeding in Colorado. But his smooth talking, calm, and collected demeanor didn't draw any unwanted attention. He just paid the fine and moved on. And finally, exhausted and finalized on his decision of what he wanted to do, he stopped in Pueblo, Colorado, and he would place a call to the Santa Cruz Police Department, where he already knew several of the officers because they were his bar buddies, and he would begin his marathon confession. And the initial contact required several calls, because first he had to convince the Santa Cruz police he wasn't a prank caller, which is crazy. And then he had to help them find where he was using points of interest, because he was disoriented, and how to lead the police to the Pueblo phone booth from which he was placing the calls was kind of complicated. So when he was finally taken into custody, a party of investigators from Santa Cruz headed for Pueblo, where they would question him about the crimes for which he claimed responsibility, and which they couldn't believe, because this was just Big Ed from the bar, the guy that just loves to hang out with cops for some weird reason and ask a lot of weird questions about, how to hide evidence and where they patrol and all that weird stuff. That's crazy, man. It's crazy. But as the tape recorder rolled, Ed just yapped, giving incredibly explicit and detailed confessions to 8 of the recent murders, because the other 2 were his grandparents, which he was already punished for. So upon his return to Santa Cruz, Ed led investigators to various disposal sites he had used and continued his seemingly endless confession. Guy loved to yap. And when he was finally finished, he'd been so thorough that he left his court-appointed public defender, James Jackson, no avenue for defense except that of insanity, because he literally said every single that there was no defense. The lawyer lost before anything started, and a series of witnesses was brought in to try to establish that Ed was not responsible for his crimes. But the prosecutor undermined the testimony of each one. And prosecutor witness Dr. Joel Fort did the most damage to Ed's insanity defense. He had spent quite a bit of time reviewing Ed's case, going back to his diagnosis after killing his grandparents and during his time at Atascadero. And he had also interviewed Ed, eliciting previously unknown information about his sexual practices with the bodies, and even allegedly cannibalism. So Ed
What?
was not a paranoid schizophrenic, Fort said. He was just obsessed with sex and violence and just craved attention, going so far as to slash his own wrists with a ballpoint pen during the trial in a futile slur slide attempt. But he was not insane, just a giant attention. Basically, he was insanely smart and very aware of what he was doing. Just remember the planning. He did over a year of surveillance before he even decided to kill someone. That's premeditated as it gets, basically. And furthermore, Fort said if he were ever released, he would absolutely kill again, and he would kill the same sort of victim. So during the 3 weeks of trial, no witness, not even Ed's sister or his doctors from Atascadero, was able to convince the jury that Ed was insane. Not to mention, Ed would take the witness stand himself and say the most awful shit. For the co-ed killings specifically, he would say, quote unquote,
Alive, they were distant, not sharing with me. I was trying to establish a relationship, and there was no relationship there. When they were being killed, there wasn't anything going on in my mind except that they were going to be mine. That was the only way they could be mine.
He would even go on to say that that's why he killed those 2 cats, his family cats, because they had more affection for his sisters, so if he killed them, they would be his. So that's where that stemmed from. But his desire to possess the co-eds led Kemper even further than murder. In his fantasies, he literally made the girls, quote unquote, a part of me by eating parts of them. Just so sick, like disgusting. And of all of his co-ed victims, he said,
They were like spirit wives. I still had their spirits. I still have them.
and regarding his mother's killing, he would go on to say that the desire to punish his mother did not end with a fatal hammer blow. As we know, he cut off his mother's head and would go on to say in court,
Put it on a shelf and screamed at it for an hour. Threw darts at it, and then smashed her face in.
I cut off her head, and I humiliated her corpse.
I have no words. Like, Jesus Christ. So the jury would deliberate for only 5 hours, and they would find Ed guilty of first-degree murder in all 8 counts. Thank God. But Ed would make a statement about the verdict, saying, quote unquote,
I really wasn't surprised when it came out that way. There was just no way they could find me insane. Society just isn't ready for that yet. 10 or 20 years from now, they would have. But they're not going to take a chance.
yeah, nobody's ready for that ever. Hey, 10, 20 years from now is right now? No. So after a short observation stint at Vacaville Medical Facility, he was sent to a maximum security prison at Folsom for the rest of his life. Thank God. And Ed Kemper remains behind bars to this day. Guy is still alive. Somehow. And Ed, being the attention-grabbing asshat that he is, remains very eager to speak of his crimes to the public and basically anyone who will listen. He has done extensive interviews with Robert Ressler of the FBI, which were aimed at building the FBI's nascent serial killer profiling program. If you've ever seen Mindhunter, which I highly recommend you see, it's one of my favorite shows, you'd know that many episodes were actually based on these exact encounters with Ed Kemper. And the actor is terrifyingly good. It is just, it's fantastic media. I highly recommend watching it. And in 1988, he participated along with notorious John Wayne Gacy in a satellite broadcast during which each killer described his crimes. And he has done quite a few other interviews as well, one of which was extremely chilling. After the interviewer was done wrapping up the interview with Ed, Ed finished by saying this, quote unquote.
You haven't asked the question I expected a reporter to ask.
The reporter said, what do you mean? Give me some examples. Ed would say,
Oh, what is it like to have sex interact with a dead body? What does it feel like to sit on your living room couch and look over and see 2 decapitated girls' heads on the arm of the couch? The first time, it makes you sick to your stomach. What do you think now, when you see a pretty girl walking down the street? One side of me says, wow, what an attractive chick. I'd like to talk to her, date her. And the other side of me says, I wonder how her head would look like on a stick.
I literally just got full body chills. It's just f***ing disgusting.
Ugh.
Monster. I hope you're f***ing rotting in jail, you piece of shit waste of oxygen. And that quote was actually used in one of my actual favorite movies, which just makes me sick
Is
now,
it a-
but it's American Psycho.
Yeah.
And he actually, Patrick Bateman, misquotes and says it was Ed Gein that says it. But then that goes all on another thing that he was actually imagining all this stuff in the movie, and it's all this. There's a lot of stuff to go into. Either way, just all around piece of shit Ed Kemper was. Just a monster. And I mean, they obviously used it in the movie American Psycho because he's supposed to be a monster too. And as always, he was very explicit, and he seemed to have garnered quite a bit of psychological insight into the nature of his crimes. And in watching him, you see he almost thrives off getting reactions from the listeners or the interviewers. He always wants them to know that he has the upper hand in the conversation, and literally, because he's a literal giant. But in prison, where he is now, he's very well behaved and very cooperative, just like he was in the hospital as a teenager, just molding into society to better himself, and seems to just take great pride in his status as a genius serial killer, who, if he had not turned himself in, is sure he would still be out there killing today. But Ed Kemper's story is more than just a record of brutality. It's a chilling example of what happens when a dangerous mind learns how to hide in plain sight. He was intelligent, calculating, and deeply disturbed. And while he seemed harmless to those around him, inside he was spiraling into something monstrous. And in the end, the only reason he stopped was because he chose to, which I think is the scariest part of all of this. But with that is the deep dive on Ed Kemper. Let me know what other deep dives you want me to do down below, and don't hitchhike. Thank you. I want you to be safe. Baby girl, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to the episode. I love you, I appreciate you, and I will see your beautiful face in the next episode. Okay? Be safe.
Bye.
Bye.
Alright, let's see. Rotten Mongol. Okay, I have not watched this one.
Bada bing, bada boom.
It's not the same as it is in America. I mean, for one, when you step into this building, it's 4, sometimes 6 stories tall, and you turn to your right. The first thing that you see is a line of cubbies just spanning the entire wall. You have to pick an empty cubby, slip off your shoes, put them in the cubby, and then you have to switch to indoor shoes when you walk in. You can't walk in with socks or barefoot. You need to slip on dedicated indoor shoes that you have to bring. Then it's time for the daily stair walk. You head to the staircase, and then you walk all your way up to the designated room. Newer buildings have elevators for accessibility, but this one does not. So once you get to the designated floor, you just see one single hallway with rows. On both sides of the hallway are these massive sliding doors that lead into these big rooms with rows and rows and rows and rows
Why is
of
she
desks
making
lined up.
a school sound
Every
creepy?
single person that you pass is wearing a knee-length plaid skirt or trousers and a blazer. You find your designated spot. You start cleaning. There's no janitors. Everybody is responsible for your own designated area. And once you're done, you look out the giant window, and the building is almost in this U shape that's centered around this courtyard. It sounds like a large, sometimes terrifying building, but it's not. There's not that many entrances or exits. The halls are usually patrolled by the staff. Welcome to a South Korean elementary school, where it is rather difficult to go missing. February 10th of 2025, so not too long ago. 8-year-old Haner is one of the last kids to be picked up from the school. When the adult comes to sign her out of her aftercare class, Haner is instructed to walk down a flight of stairs to the front entrance. She's done this Monday through Friday. This is not a new schedule for Haner. The front desk, the academy teacher who's picking her up, waits a minute, then waits 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Now it's getting weird. But maybe she stopped by the restrooms first before coming downstairs, or maybe she forgot her book in another classroom. The academy teacher waits a full 10 minutes before all hell breaks loose. Because an 8-year-old cannot just go missing in the span of 10 minutes inside the school. How is that even possible? There's barely any entrances or exits that are not patrolled. Even if she had run out, she left her outdoor shoes. So what, she's just running away in her slippers? Additionally, even if she was able to make it out of the school, someone's gonna see her in the courtyard or the parking lot that she has to get through. But nobody's seen her. Teachers and faculty are all alerted that the 8-year-old Hanir is missing. They track down the teacher that Hanir was last with. She's so confused. What do you, I was just with her. I mean, you guys called her out of the class after care, so I sent her downstairs. I mean, the stairs are just around the corner. She could have gone down the stairs, and then she would have been practically face to face with the front desk. So what do you mean?
So the front desk will call the classroom, say, hey, release,
Yeah, release this one kid. They're
Okay.
here for pickup.
Right.
Then it's up to the kid to walk from the second floor down the stairs to the first floor and then get picked up from the main front entrance.
Right. But 10 minutes later, she's still not there.
No. And now they're checking all the classrooms, under the desk, in the teacher's break room, cafeteria, all the restrooms. Hanir is missing. She's gone. But it doesn't make sense. How does she leave the building without somebody seeing her? By 5:30 p.m., the entire area is in lockdown. There are police cars, ambulances surrounding the entire elementary school. Neighbors are standing outside in their big puffer jackets. It's snowing. Their eyes are red from crying. Their hands are red from the cold wind. They're all huddled together. If one of the neighbors stands there and does a full 360 turn, they're going to see massive apartment buildings surrounding the entire school. That's thousands upon thousands of apartment units that Hanir could be trapped in. Her phone location shows her in this area, so either she was in the school, she's lured into an apartment, she's in a car somewhere. We don't know. There's so many possibilities. Authorities and Hanir's family are running around trying to find her, and it's not until 6 p.m. that night that 2 people are rushed into the emergency room.
When was the pickup again, initially?
4:40 p.m.
So it's been an hour and 20 minutes.
Yes. 8-year-old Hanir and a 48-year-old woman, a school teacher, are rushed into the ER, both suffering from stab wounds. The doctors, they're not given a rundown of exactly what happened. They're just here to do their jobs, which is to save these people. 8-year-old Hanir does not make it. She does not survive her injuries. But the 48-year-old school teacher, she's alive. I mean, she's gonna be okay. It's a very good feeling. Some nurses are likely thinking of all the scenarios in their head. Okay, a knife-wielding madman snuck into the school targeting kids. Maybe they killed 8-year-old Hanir, and the teacher, in an attempt to try and protect her, was stabbed. Was the attacker after the child, or after the teacher, or after all the children? Regardless, it's going to be very difficult to tell the teacher that the student did not survive. When the teacher wakes up, all those concerns are gone.
Have you seen
Because the
Chinkufruta? Of
48-year-old
course.
woman, the school teacher, she sits up in the hospital bed and she starts laughing. Because she did it. This is what it seems like she wanted. She wanted to kill the 8-year-old girl, and now she seems very content with what she's done.
Pretty red
This
right
is
now.
the current ongoing case
Yeah.
of 8-year-old Hanir in South Korea. We would like to thank today's sponsors who have made it possible for Rotten Mango to support Baby to Baby. They're a nonprofit that provides essential items to more than 1 million children across the country in multiple different shelters, domestic violence programs, foster care, hospitals, and underserved schools. This episode's partnerships have also made it possible to support Rotten Mango's growing team, and we would also like to thank you guys for your continued support. As always, full show notes are available at RottenMangoPodcast.com. Today's case involves themes of unaddressed mental illness and CA resulting in death, so please take some time if that's too overwhelming, and we will see you in the next one. This case is pretty recent and is South Korean, so we had our international researchers work on gathering the most updated information. However, there will still be updates after this episode goes up. We're going to do our best to keep you updated. So with that being said, let's get started. February of 2025, this app starts going viral in South Korea. It feels like every single person and their mother is downloading this app. It's not TikTok. The app is actually quite controversial. People are having full-blown debates about the ethical implications of such an app. Are you really promoting stalking? I mean, since when did stalking and invasion of privacy become a mainstream thing that we just all accept now? The app in question has a few features that's rubbing a lot of people the wrong way. The app not only tracks your live location, but it also tracks every single separate place that your phone has been in the past 24 hours.
Oh, that's...
So after the fact, someone can go in and see at 2:30 p.m. you were at the doctor's office. If you were out running 50 different errands that day, the app is going to track all of
Like,
that.
I get it for
Do I
kids,
see
but then
that or somebody else?
if someone hacks
Somebody
into it,
else.
what then?
Now, let's say because you're out running errands all
My
day
family
long,
actually
your
track each
phone
other.
is on silent,
Yeah,
and you
but not
don't
like-
hear your best friend
Like that,
or
right?
someone you love blowing
Using
up
a
your
Code
phone,
Live
they
360.
can just click on an alarm sound and it'll ring an alarm, bypassing
Think
the
I've heard of it.
silencing features on your phone to make sure you and everybody else around you knows, hey, I was trying to reach you, call me back.
Oh my god.
It also monitors all the different apps that are being used on your phone, how long someone spends on each app, and the most intriguing thing is the sound around feature, which sounds innocent enough, but a lot of netizens understandably find it one of the creepiest things an app can do. Think of it as live listening. Let's say
Oh,
I
that,
have
yeah.
phone A, you have phone B.
That's
I'm
so
the account
that is
holder.
creepy.
That means at any given point in my day, I can decide on my phone, on phone A, to click this little ear button on the app, and I can hear whatever your phone picks up. So no matter if you're 1,000 feet from me, 1,000 miles from me, if your phone is at a cafe, I can hear as much as the phone's internal microphone can pick up. Obviously, if the phone is in your jean pocket, it's going to be muffled a little bit, but if it's on the table,
That is creepy
I could
for
probably
real.
hear your conversation with whoever you're having, and then conversations around the cafe.
How is that legal? Like, forget about the personal side. Imagine you're in a private meeting.
Yes.
Somebody else can just secretly listen in like that?
Yes, because parents have all the rights. This is
No.
a parenting app. Phone A is used by a parent and they can live listen on their children's phones, whether they be at
Children's
school or at a cafe.
Or little people
or an
too, bro. They
after-school
don't
program.
know.
I can see why a lot of people call it a stalker app, but parents in South Korea, they start mass downloading this app February of 2025. Haner's dad already had it installed onto Haner's phone for a few months by this point. She didn't know it existed. She didn't know it was on her phone, but she's 8. The argument that some people have is, I think these types of parenting apps are a lot more heavily debated once that kid turns into a teenager.
Yeah.
Because when you hit your teens, it's a lot more of a need for privacy. Although I do think that even an 8-year-old deserves a heavy amount of privacy. I wouldn't say heavy amount, but a good amount of privacy and not feeling like somebody is listening to them all the time.
Wait, that is kind of mind-blowing right now. How is that normal?
Okay, I've seen lots of debates. I think as someone who does not have kids, I'm not entirely certain. I did talk to my sister who has 2 kids, but they're very young and she doesn't believe in apps like this. She thinks if you've already don't have that level of trust. However, I do see some people in Korea argue differently. They say in Korea it's a little bit different because the kids are a lot more mobile. So in America,
That
it's
is
like you drive
true.
your kid to school or the bus picks them up. Then you pick them up and then you bring them somewhere. Everything is driven. In Korea, you see 8-year-olds taking the subway by themselves. So they're saying it might be more necessary for an 8-year-old. I don't know the ethic and moral concerns of this. It's hard for me to debate as someone who does not have children. I personally feel like it's an invasion of privacy, but again, I'm not a parent, so I wouldn't know. Now, the argument here being is that Hannah is 8. It's likely that she would not have cared too much either way if it was on her phone or not. Her parents always knew where she was, which was always at school or after school program or Hagwon or the after school academy, and then home on repeat 5 days a week. Like, that's it. Except Monday, February 10th, 2025. After school is technically at around 2 p.m., so the class ends at 2 p.m. Hanit is scheduled to stay in the after-school program until 4:40 p.m., so almost 3 hours to get ahead on schoolwork, get her homework done, get prepared for academy lessons. The academy teacher then goes around and picks up all the kids from the neighboring schools and then brings them to academy
At 4:30.
at like 5.
Okay, so there's more classes at 5 o'clock.
Yes, and this is not just a Haner's schedule. This is like the typical day of an 8-year-old in South Korea. You're talking heavily competitive job market in South Korea. Like you start preparing when you're 5. So she's waiting for her Hagwon teacher to come pick her up, and she's in the after-school program at the school. I will say that the 3 hours that she's waiting after class, it's less of a school and more so a transition class. It's not a free-for-all, but it's not active teaching. You're not like actively learning, you're probably doing your homework. That is where she is until 4:40 p.m. She is almost always the last one to be picked up just based on the academy schedule. She is instructed that day, she's in that program that day, Monday, February 10th. She's instructed to make her way downstairs because the Hagwon teacher has come to pick her up. But that day, she just vanishes. She's gone. The after-school program teacher sees her walk out of the classroom, and then poof, she's missing. 10 minutes later, everybody's asking her, where did Haner go? And she's like, what are you talking about? She left the classroom. Haner's parents are alerted. They're freaking out. What do you mean she's missing? What do you mean? Haner's grandmother, who lives closer to the school, she rushes over there. And when Haner's dad, Kim, gets to the school, he knows this is not normal. By this point, there's a few officers trying to help out and trying to help Haner. He's firm. This is not normal. This is not something my daughter does. She's not overworked. She's not overstressed. Like, this is not normal. The biggest fear is that she was lured off the school grounds into one of those thousands of apartment units just surrounding the entire building. But even that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Someone would have seen something. Kim pulls up the parenting app that he downloaded on Haner's phone. Haner's phone location shows that she is in this vicinity of the school, but they can't narrow it down even more. Basically, the app said she's either in the school or one of the 10 apartment buildings surrounding the school.
Imagine.
Kim tries calling Haner. She's not picking up. He goes into the app. He clicks on the little ear button, the sound around feature. And if Haner has her phone with her, he's going to be able to hear whatever the phone picks up. He's standing outside in the freezing cold. He's trying to listen as close as he can. He hears something. He's trying to get away from all the people screaming Haner's name so he can clearly hear the phone. And the first thing he notices, the first thing he tells everyone is, when I first heard it, I realized the sounds are not coming from the outside. Inside. She's inside somewhere. This phone is inside in a building. It doesn't sound like she's outside. There's no car noise, no wind, no noise pollution whatsoever. So she's inside. But he cannot hear Haner's voice at all. She's not talking. He hears on the other end, heavy breathing? Labored breathing?
That is so creepy.
There's just heavy breathing on the other end. And it's not coming from Haner. And I don't know if I've ever really given it thought until this point, but based on how little clues there are right now of where Haner is, Kim realizes someone is with Haner. Someone is heavy breathing.
Ugh.
He is certain that this is not Haner. Because Haner is 8 years old. Sure, you can say breathing sounds the same. It's just breathing noises.
No.
But imagine an 8-year-old and a 40-year-old run a marathon. Both of them are going to be heavy breathing at the end, trying to catch their breath, but it's going to sound different. It's because the fact as adults age, the airway muscles, the cartilage becomes less elastic. You're going to try to catch your breath as an older adult, and the airflow is going to sound more turbulent. There's actually medical reasons, like in your anatomy, why your heavy breathing sounds different depending on your age and depending on your medical conditions. You're not going to be able to as quickly catch your breath as, let's say, an 8-year-old. Maybe there's even guttural throat noises that just cannot come from the vocal cords of an 8-year-old. Kim can hear it, but regardless, he is certain whoever is heavy breathing on the other line is not Haner. It sounds like someone middle-aged, just ran 400 feet, is winded. Why would someone be winded near Haner? Where is Haner? Why does this person have her phone? Also, there's these sounds as if someone is opening and closing drawers. Like you have a desk and you're just opening and closing drawers rapidly in quick succession. Like multiple drawers are being opened and then closed, opened. It's like someone is frantically looking for something.
Do we know how long has it been at this point when he started to listen?
About 10, 15, 20-ish minutes.
So very early on.
Yes.
Like she just went missing.
Yeah. Haner's dad is frozen in the middle of what looks like hell has broken loose. There's police cars, there's officers, there's neighbors and teachers all screaming Haner's name, and he's just hearing heavy breathing. He brings his phone down and he presses the alarm button. If Haner's phone is anywhere nearby, they're all going to be able to hear this loud alarm bell ring. But instead, through the active sound around feature, he can hear someone, quote, I could hear the sound of someone forcibly terminating alarms that I kept sending through her phone.
Like
Someone is like
clicking.
opening the zipper of Haner's backpack and like clicking. Like he can hear like someone banging on her phone.
Bro.
So for an hour, Haner's dad is listening to this whilst also actively searching for his daughter, but it's not going to be him that finds his daughter. Haner's grandmother will be the one to find her.
Oh,
Grandma
jeez.
Kim has been searching this entire school building for like the 10th time. She's going up and down every single floor, checking every single classroom along with the other faculty members. A lot of police officers don't even think that Hannah is in the school building. They don't even think that she's missing. Some of them are like, maybe she's stressed out. Maybe she doesn't like Hagwon. She doesn't want to go to the after-school art academy, which it just doesn't make sense. But it also doesn't make sense that she's in this school. There's not that many places that she could be hiding. There's barely any hiding spots. Grandma Kim doesn't even know what to do. She's gone through every single floor, but it's not like she can just burst into a random stranger's apartment in all the neighboring apartment buildings being like, do you know where my 8-year-old granddaughter is? So she can just spend her energy going through the second floor again for the 10th time. This is where her granddaughter went missing. This is where she was last seen. Grandma Kim searches the entire floor again. She's about to take a left onto the stairs that lead her back to the first floor when a small door catches her eye. I mean, the door has been there all along. It's the audio video room. Every school has one. It's usually like a soundproofed, windowless room. Sometimes there's windows, but there's shades, blackout curtains. It's where the kids are taken if they need to watch a presentation on a projector, or if they need to watch an educational movie. Instead of those rolling screens or like the projector screens in every single classroom, you go to the audio video room. It's almost always locked because, you know, the last thing you want is a troublemaker getting in there, connecting to the speakers, blasting some curse words or music. But there is something about this room. Grandma Kim reaches for the doorknob, turns it, and it pushes open. It's unlocked. She swings open the door, and it's dark. The shades are drawn, but the light coming in from the door she just opened from the hallway, she can see that there's nobody in the room. There's nothing amiss. There's no desk that's overturned. There's nothing. Maybe it's intuition. Maybe it's being thorough. She sees another small door inside the audio room, which is probably a storage closet for all the gear. She walks up towards it, opens the door. There's no light switch she can quickly find, so now there's barely any light coming into the closet. The hallway door is open a crack, so there's some light, but barely. Grandma Kim uses the light on her phone, and she just sees legs, like large legs, on the floor.
Oh, jeez.
There's a woman, a full-grown woman, just laying on the floor. She moves her phone up, and the woman's face is covered in blood. Grandma Kim is terrified. She's about to drop her phone. Every hair on her neck is standing up and is telling her, get out, danger, like you need to leave. What she has to ask. She's trying to remain calm. Have you seen my granddaughter? Her name is Haner. No.
Oh, she's conscious?
Yes. Grandma Kim runs out of the storage closet, out of the audio room, and into the hallway. She's calling Haner's dad. She's calling the police. She's standing guard because she knows something's going on in that closet. But Haner's dad already knows when he picks up the phone because he heard his mom's voice. After an hour of listening to heavy breathing on the other end of the parenting app, he suddenly hears his mom's voice. Have you seen my granddaughter? Her name is Haner. And a woman responds, no. Grandma Kim stands guard at the audio video room door in the hallway, and she's like waiting for the police to arrive. They get there in seconds, minutes. It's like barely any time has passed. Maybe there's an attacker going around the school. She's terrified. Whoever did that to the lady might have done that to Haner. Where the hell are they? Are they attacking more people actively? But also, there was something about that woman. Grandma Kim sensed that she didn't seem scared. She didn't ask for help. She wasn't like, no, help me, save me, there's a killer. She didn't say any of that. She just said, no, I haven't seen your granddaughter. Why do you ask such a random thing? Grandma Kim would later say, it didn't look like it was her own blood either. It didn't look like she was bleeding. It looked like she was covered in blood. Within minutes, police and Haner's father are surrounding the second floor audio video room storage closet, and the storage unit door that Grandma Kim had just opened and saw the woman on the floor, now locked from the inside.
Oh.
Who the hell is that woman that she just saw? Usually, every single school has that one haunted ghost story. There are ghost stories of long ago a student that was pushed off the roof. Sometimes, most of the times it's not true. And they now haunt the locker rooms, or how the school was built on a cemetery and now there's always...
Hey Colonel, what's your... Did your school have a haunted like haunted story, because mine was in our school. There was like a big old tree outside, like around the playground, and they said that a witch lived there. Like they would dare you to go up and touch the trunk. Like it was in the middle of a field, like it was just there standing alone. So they would dare you to go up to it and touch it. And the thing was that like they said that like the witch would come if you touched the trunk or got too close or anything, like a witch would like hop down and like take you up to the tree and you'd never be seen again and stuff like that. Did your school have one like that? Random thought. Because she brought it up.
Screams coming from the gym showers because that's where some of the graves were buried over. And then nobody goes after dark. There's always a ghost haunting the grounds. This elementary school in Daegu, South Korea, their ghost story is this one teacher.
Oh yeah, and apparently there was a bunch of other ghost stories that I didn't know about. No, we had no myths. The only thing we had was some kid become paralyzed for a day in elementary. Oh, jeez, this poor kid. Yeah, we had other stories, but I wasn't like, bro, I was autistic, okay? If I didn't, I'm autistic, okay? If I didn't know about it, it didn't exist. So, like, apparently, our elementary school was actually used to be, a hospital, which actually makes sense now that I think about back to it, like, the rooms and stuff like that. There was always the long hallway and then a bunch of other rooms, so like it makes so much sense that it was a hospital. But like yeah, like I'm glad I didn't know the other horror stories. Nah, it was his fault. He got up in my face. Dang, what'd you do to him? And it was you? Bro.
When she walks down the halls, everybody gets quiet. You can hear her before you see her. It just echoes down the hallway, and all the kids, these elementary schoolers, they step to the side because it's creepy. They press their bodies up against the walls to avoid her. She just walks down the center of the hallway with a box cutter in her hand. She pushes the blade all the way out and then pushes it back in. The kids said it was really weird. Like, I mean, it's not threatening. She's not holding the box cutter up to people or wielding it around, but she just keeps fidgeting with it, like pulling the blade out, pulling it in, making the noise non-stop.
Is this a story?
Rumor was your bio teacher was looking down the shirts of girls from school.
That these kids in this specific school have said about this teacher. She just goes.
Not a ghost story.
No, it's like she's the ghost haunting the hallways. She has this empty look on her face. These are what the kids are saying. She has these dark circles that just come down all the way into her cheek. In schools in South Korea, it's very different from America, where if you see other teachers in the hallway, you might be like, "Hi, Mrs. Smith," but you don't really do anything more. And sometimes if you don't recognize a teacher, you don't say anything.
Yeah.
But in South Korea, you have to you have to bow to every single teacher.
Yeah.
And so a lot of students will bow to her, and she'll just look at you with a blank expression as if she's looking through you like she's a ghost.
Creepy.
And then she's using this box cutter, pulling the blade out, pulling the blade in, and then sometimes she's just walking around with, you know those painter's tape, the blue rolls of tape?
Yeah.
Nobody knows what she's doing with that blue tape. She just walks around with a roll of blue tape in her hands. Other students would complain to their parents at home. I mean, she brings in this long stick to the classroom. It's like a long ruler stick that teachers use to point at the words on the board, but she likes to hit her podium with it.
Oh, okay.
And it's pretty hard.
Oh, one time in high school, my other rich girl let her daughter have a party with alcohol. It was all over the news, bro.
No, she swings it so loudly that we can hear the air whipping. Like, it's not normal. They also tell their parents, I heard she even broke a computer in the teacher's office. Something about her is not normal. And the parents all think, well, that's crazy. That's just a rumor. The weirdest part is, she used to be one of the nicest teachers in the entire school. That is why she's the ghost story of the school. It's like one day she comes to work and it's someone else inside of her body. She goes from being the nicest teacher, the best teacher, the one that would give you snacks, would never make you feel dumb for asking stupid questions, one of the most patient teachers, to just being a ghost that's haunting the hallways of the school. One student says, I don't know, she was very well spoken and super kind. I don't know what happened to her. Within minutes, the police and Haner's father arrive in.
Oh, one of my old high school, one of my friends planning to have me to school with her birthday, like she had condoms ready and everything. Oh, and she got caught and spilled her and the fornication occurred. Oh, bro.
Front of the locked storage closet door in the audio video.
That's
film.
wild.
And the police start kicking in the door 20 times to finally get it open. And when they rush in, they turn on the light and they see
Boyfriend,
the
not
woman
birthday.
that Grandma Kim was telling them about.
I was like, dang, that's a wild birthday.
40-something-year-old woman laying limp on the floor, and next to her is a tiny little body covered in blood. Haner. She was placed deeper in the closet so Grandma Kim could not see her, but both Haner and the teacher are laying on their backs towards each other, heads facing the same direction, covered in blood. Haner had been stabbed dozens of times in the left part of her neck, arm, and chest area, as well as her back. There were clear defensive stab wounds on her hands. It seems that she was trying to block the knife with her hands, and the teacher has a self-inflicted wound on her neck. Both of them are rushed instantly to the hospital, where Haner is pronounced dead at 6:35 p.m.
Darling.
This is after 1.5 hours since she had gone missing. 8-year-old Haner was stabbed to death by a teacher from her school.
Okay, that's all I can remember. Did you have any school gossip? Let me think. I'm pretty sure I did, but like I said, autism. Oh, I was kept to myself as well, but I'm pretty sure some of my, friends, colleagues told me some stuff about it, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But I will share if it pops up later.
Inside the ICU unit, the teacher is laying there on an oxygen respirator, not allowed to have anything orally, not even allowed to drink water. And the second that they take the tubes out of her when she's stable enough, the teacher starts laughing. That's what the nurses and the doctors have reported. Every single doctor and nurse in that room goes still because what the hell is she laughing about?
So they all knew what happened at this point.
Yeah. The police are guarding the hospital room, and when they hear her laughter, they rush in to question her. None of this makes sense. I mean, they clearly know what happened, but nothing else makes any sense whatsoever. The teacher is a second-grade teacher at the elementary school. She's not even Haner's teacher. She's not even the after-school program teacher that Haner was with. It doesn't appear like this teacher even had any sort of interactions with Haner. Why did she kill her?
No connection whatsoever.
No, it's not like Haner was, and not that it would be called for, or not saying it's an excuse of, oh, she was the troublemaker in the class, but no, like truly, and again, that's not an excuse, that's not a reason behind
my
it.
sixth grade
but it's
teacher
even
was
more
kinda
bizarre
weird.
considering the fact that there is truly no connection there. They don't even really interact with each other at all. The teacher tells authorities when she's calmed down from her supposed laughing fit, it doesn't matter which child. It didn't matter to me. I just wanted to die with someone. So I told the child leaving the care classroom, after school program classroom, I'll give you a book. You need to read this book. And then I got them in the audio video classroom. That's where I strangled her and stabbed her with a knife. It didn't matter which kid I took with me. I just didn't want to die alone. Within hours, this case is everywhere. It is one of the biggest cases in the news cycle in South Korea, but also international headlines. News outlets like BBC, teacher fatally stabs 8-year-old in South Korea. CBS News, teacher stabs 8-year-old student to death at elementary school in South Korea. CNN, teacher accused...
I hate people who, whenever they're gonna commit suicide, they have to take someone with them because they're just scared to do it by themselves, especially when they do it to children. Like, that is so messed up.
Accused of killing first grader as school stabbing shocked South Korea. But nobody, not even in Korea, nobody knows who the teacher is. They just know her to be a 48-year-old teacher from the school. That's it. Her identity has not been released. Understandably, netizens start demanding for it. The public should have the right to know who the perpetrator is. People in Korea are commenting, personal information must be disclosed on this case. The identity should not be kept hidden. Which I will mention in the very beginning, before it was confirmed by authorities that the teacher did wake up and did admit to the stabbing. Again, she hasn't been on trial, so we can't say that she is guilty of first-degree murder, but she did state that she did do it. But there was brief confusion prior to that online about whether or not there was like a third party involved, because people could just not wrap their heads around the idea that a teacher would stab an 8-year-old student. So they thought maybe there's like a knife-wielding madman inside the school that hasn't been caught, so why release the teacher's identity? We don't know for sure. But once the teacher more or less confirmed that she stabbed Hunter, whether she'll take it back or not, we don't know, but people start demanding for the release of her identity. Netizens argue, and it's not like the public aren't guessing. They're saying we're actually doing more harm than good by not releasing her identity. People are pulling out random teachers' names, being like, maybe it's this one looks 48, this one said she's 48, this one used to work in that school, just pointing the finger at any other teacher. But the law in Korea works in a way that a 7-person deliberation committee has to go through the case, take into account all the aggravating factors, and finally they decide we're going to release the identity. But the process is not over. They have to now alert the teacher. They say, you can appeal our decision, or you can say, go ahead, and we're going to release the identity. To which she immediately consents.
She consents?
Yeah. And a full month after the murder, the teacher's identity is revealed to be a 48-year-old teacher, Jae-wan Myung, Mrs. Myung. There are 2 photos of her released. Her professional headshot for school and her mugshots. Her headshot, she appears to be a very normal, if even a bit conventionally attractive teacher. She looks younger than her age in the headshot, at least, with a bob cut to her chin and side bangs. She's got a pleasant insang, which means, I guess, facial composition that Koreans tend to gravitate towards. It's like she doesn't have really angry eyebrows or very suspicious eyes. I don't know. These are all very arbitrary, stupid, judgmental things that some people go by in Korean standards. But generally, her insang seems approachable. She seems really nice, which shocked a lot of netizens. Some netizens were commenting if they saw her on the street asking for help, they would help her. Let alone if she was the teacher at their school, they would go with her into the audio-video room.
A little back context for
Yes.
Korean incheon,
Yes.
right? If I'm correct, it's big in Korean culture. Like when you meet someone, you take in like their first impression, their aura, their energy, their facial vibes, and then you kind of, give a little vibe towards this person. Either it's good or bad. Right?
Yeah, so, okay. First impression, I feel like in American standards, and I'm not promoting like the South Korean insang, it's just something that I always hear my parents say, or like Koreans talk about it frequently. In American standards, when you meet someone, their first impression is usually based off of the conversation that you have, or what they talk about, or what they're interested in. In Korean standards, it's a mixture of that, plus their facial composition, and then just the energy, and even the way that they're dressed. So the insang is not just good or bad. It can be like, oh, she gives me a very soft girl impression, or she gives me a very cool girl impression, like she seems headstrong. It's not like good or bad. It's just like everybody has a different aura. Like she seems opinionated, but in a fun way. Like it's kind of that. And Koreans believe that sometimes your facial composition could add to that.
And it's actually very big in the culture.
Yes.
Like very big. So
Yeah.
for them to give a
Insang? Yeah.
insang of someone, and then they see that this is the person who did this crime, now that's a conversation.
Yes. So I think what a lot of people were expecting was a headshot of a teacher who just looks like an evil, mean, vile, like you just see her in the
Reminds me of that
hallways
one
and
video
she
we saw
looks like
last
she
stream.
came to work hating children. I think that's
Which
the
one?
picture that everybody was expecting. It's just that her headshot did not feel that
We
way.
watched like
So I think that just
2, I
adds to the
think.
fact that netizens are even more scared in Korea. Because they're saying, of course 8-year-old Hanil went with her. First of all, she's an authority figure and she's in the school. This is a safe zone, typically. Obviously in America it's different right now, but also in South Korea things are changing. But it's typically supposed to be a safe zone for students, especially to trust their own teachers. And then she looks so kind and friendly. People are saying, if I saw her on the street, I would have gone with her. But others who just look at her mugshot say, oh, it's different. If you just look at her mugshot, she looks scary. And then others comment, well, people say she looks scary, but she only
people who
looks
were
scary
blaming a
because she
teacher
did
that looked
something
evil.
scary.
Oh yeah,
If
yeah.
ordinary
Remember now.
people took a photo using their back camera right after waking up without washing their face, that's what her mugshot looks like. To which others point out how ironic society is. So aside from her pictures, they were just saying like, we got her identity and all we want to do is judge her looks. Aside from her pictures, we know a few things about Myung. She has a son that is taking the college entrance exam this year. It's likely that she's
She
recently
ruined
divorced.
that kid's life.
That's about it. That is all we know about her. I think that there is this natural yearning to know more about her that netizens feel like there's gotta be something
People were
in
like,
her digital
Oh, yeah.
footprint or something that indicates that she's this sick, twisted, nasty little seed that has been left behind. Like, we gotta find something. But all people could find was her thesis when she's getting her master's degree. In it, she writes about switching to a level-based curriculum to break away from the homogenized curriculum to help students pursue self-directed individual learning. She also writes, there is a quote, there is a saying, the quality of education cannot surpass the level of the teacher. So she fundamentally agrees with that saying, that the quality of the education cannot surpass the level of the teacher. So teachers need to rise up and do more and be at the forefront of making sure the kids are receiving quality education, and it falls on them. Which maybe she felt that genuinely years ago, but clearly not now. That's all people were able to dig up on Myung, and that, in a few days before allegedly killing Hunter, she choked a colleague of hers.
Whoa.
4 days before the murder, at around 5:15 p.m., this is a random Thursday, one of the teachers at the school, let's call them Mrs. A, she's springing out of the classroom, one hand on her throat, the other hand grabbing the walls in front of her. She's running, she's stopping to cough. I mean, it's not even a small cough. It's like she's choking on a grape. She runs to the teachers' offices. Thankfully, none of the teachers have gone home after class. They're working on lessons plans. Her face is entirely red, and she's like, Mrs. Myung, Mrs. Myung. And they're like, what happened? What happened? Mrs. A explains, I was on the way out when I saw her sitting in the dark of a random classroom, just like in the middle of the classroom, crouching down. I noticed that she hadn't really been herself recently, so I slid open the door. I walked in, and she's sitting there motionless, and it was kind of creepy, so I stepped, getting in a little bit closer. Mrs. Myung, are you okay? Suddenly, she reaches up, grabs Mrs. A's left arm, twists it behind her, and backs, so she's like pinning her, like a pro wrestling move. Suddenly, Mrs. A's arm is behind her in a very painful way. She's getting dragged onto the ground. Myung starts grabbing the back of Mrs. A's puffer jacket, choking her on her own collar, and she starts freaking out. She's coughing, trying to scream. She's being strangled, and this is unprompted, out of nowhere. Mrs. A has one arm to try and scratch Myung's arms off her neck. Mrs. A, she's trying to think quick. She's not trying to piss off Miss Myung. She tries to reason with her. Can you tell me what's going on? What's going on? Can you talk to me? Are you okay? In a blank voice, she claims Myung just tells her, why? Why do only I have to be unhappy? What about all of you?
Like, this is an attempt murder.
And then suddenly, a vibrating noise. Mrs. A looks down. Myung's phone is vibrating on the table, and she's trying to signal, don't you need to pick that up? Your phone could be your husband. Please, don't you need to answer it? Husband, we're divorced. When I go home, nobody's there. I'm all alone. The teacher immediately reports it to the administration in the school. This is on Thursday. They deliberate and they decide to talk to Mrs. Myung on Monday about it, and it is clear that Mrs. Myung is not ready to come back to the school. She was actually supposed to be on a 6-month medical leave and came back after just 20 days. Prior to the incident of trying to strangle and kill her colleague, Mrs. Myung was known to have been one of the nicest teachers, in the sense that normally she had a lot more patience with the kids. She's been a teacher for the past 20 years. She knows what to expect. She knows how to manage her emotions. In fact, throughout her tenure teaching, she's consistently won awards of commendation and never had any complaints about her work from colleagues, parents, or students. According to medical records, Mrs. Myung this whole time had been struggling with depression, severely for the past 5 years. December of 2024, it was agreed upon by the school and the administration that Mrs. Myung would take sick leave for 6 months. She would focus on treating her depression. That's the plan everybody agreed on, especially because Myung's doctors wrote that it's going to take about 6 months of heavy, intensive treatment. They wrote to Miss Myung's boss, the patient is currently suffering from severe depression and lethargy, requiring at least 6 months of stable care. But 20 days later, right before winter break, Miss Myung just shows back up. Just kind of startling everyone, especially because they had already filled her spot, and she said 6 months is adequate time, and now she's, back in not even 15 business days? How do you go from needing 6 months to suddenly feeling better in 20 days? Myung argued that her depression symptoms improved enough in the past 20 days that she can resume daily life again. And here's a letter from the doctor. I find that that's quite alarming. So after she comes back, there is winter break in Korea. So winter break is around mid to end December until late January in South Korea. This is happening February 6th. She's assaulting her colleague. So this is like right after winter break. So that week or two after winter break, students are saying, I don't know what happened to the teacher. She used to be the nicest, kindest, sweet teacher, and now she's walking around with a box cutter. Now she's walking around with a blue tape. She wasn't acting like this before her medical leave and then before winter break. She just comes back and she does not seem normal.
So there are signs that the students were noticing.
Yes, but she's not threatening anyone. She's not snapping. She's not screaming at people. She just seems mentally, I wouldn't even say it's unstable. It's hard to say because it's very easy for people to look at kids and be like, you're overthinking it. Not that I think kids are overthinking it, but sometimes adults have that reaction.
But she did choke someone out.
Yeah, February 6th, Thursday, she chokes out her colleague. Nothing happens on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Monday the 10th, the administrators tell Myung, and very nicely, considering she just tried to strangle her colleague, they very nicely tell her that she should probably take the rest of her sick leave. Instead of leaving the school or going to the doctor, Myung goes on to kill Hannah that afternoon.
If that happens in a school, right, a teacher literally try to attempt murder another teacher,
Yes.
I mean, I feel like there's got to be some pretty serious consequences follows right away, right?
That's why a lot of people are upset with this case. There were so many warning signs. After school on Monday the 10th, Hannah is sent to the aftercare classroom on the second floor. This is, again, not a new schedule for her. She waits from 2 p.m. to about 4:40 p.m. to be picked up by her academy teacher, where she's going to take the Hagwon bus that goes around picking up all the kids from the other different schools, takes them to the Hagwon, and then after that, she's going to be picked up by her parents at the end of the night.
Hagwon is...
It's like so after school program is at the school. They just kind of take care of you. Hagwon is like another teaching academy. So you go there to actively learn. It's like second school. Most kids will attend Hagwon these days, even at 8 years old. In between that time, Hannah's grandma thought it would be a nice surprise to go pick up her little granddaughter, take her home, get some snacks in her, and then just personally drop her off at the academy for her night studies. But Hannah said, it's fine, I don't want to be a burden. She's texting her grandma. Besides, all the teachers here are super nice. Eventually, Hannah tells her grandma that it's just her and the aftercare classroom teacher. All the other kids have left. But again, it's fine because she's about to leave soon. And just to clarify, the after-school program teacher is not Myung. It's a different teacher. It's not until 4:40 p.m. the academy teacher comes to pick up Hannah. She can't just text Hannah. She has to check in with the front desk. Then the after-school program teacher will release Hannah out of the classroom where she's going to walk down a flight of stairs to the front desk. But instead of getting there, the audio-video room door opens. Myung asks her if she wants a book, that she needs to read this book. Hannah gets lured in and she is stabbed, strangled, and stabbed to death. The knife that Myung uses, she had actually gone to buy it that day. She told her other colleagues that she was going to stop by the restroom, but instead she walked out to the parking lot, got in her car, drove about a mile to a kitchen supply store, where she is seen on CCTV camera just leisurely walking into the store, purchasing a knife, a 6.5-inch blade, 11-inch knife. She was even seen asking the clerks at the kitchen supply store if this is a good one, if the performance is good. Then she stabs Hannah to death. It is believed that by the time that Grandma Kim came into the audio storage room, Hannah was dead, but she had not stabbed herself. So Myung was covered in Hannah's blood, and a lot of people actually take that to believe she did not want to self-exit, which we'll get into in a second, but there is a lot of premeditation here. A few days prior to Hannah's murder, it was seen on forensic analysis of her digital devices that she had been searching up things about murder weapons, tools to be used against other people, tools to use for assaults, things of that nature. She later does state to the authorities, I was just irritated just 3 days that the vice principal prevented me from teaching. After she got back from winter break, the teachers just didn't want her to teach. The vice principal didn't want her to teach children either. They were asking her to do other, probably paperwork around the building, but I'm assuming they didn't feel necessarily that comfortable quite yet with her having students when she's supposed to be on a 6-month medical leave, but she comes back within like 20 days. And now that Hanner is dead, Mrs. Myung is in the hospital and she claims, "This was my depression that led me to this." One expert states,
Oh,
such
shut up.
extreme aggression is very difficult to manifest in depression, stating that it's likely, sure, she could have depression, but that there's something more. It's not the main cause to her actions. Like, she's trying to play it off as it is. With one official explaining, the suspect experienced conflict in the home and at work. She had a deep-seated resentment. Her anger was redirected outward. As for why specifically Hanner was chosen, Myung said, "I didn't really have any interaction with her. I was just choosing the easiest target. She was going to be the last one in the school to come out of the aftercare classroom, and that's on the second floor. I could unlock the audio-video room that nobody really goes into." So she's saying it did not matter to her which student it was. One expert believes that she tried to commit this whole thing with a colleague 4 days prior, that she was trying to kill her colleague and then self-exit, but it was impossible to do because there was no way that she could have done it to her colleague. The expert describes it as, this is the type of person that subconsciously or consciously does not want to be harmed by another person. So regardless of if she had intention to self-exit or not, which a lot of people don't even know for sure, it just seems like she doesn't want to pick someone her own size, basically. They're saying if this was happening in a high school, it's likely that she wouldn't have been able to go after a student. The criminologist continues, such perpetrators do not choose strong opponents. They just are worried that they themselves might be harmed if they attack someone strong. Another expert states the depression that she suffered for the past 7 years is not directly related to the crime. Depression is not linked and does not manifest in the form of murder.
For real,
It is worth mentioning that there are speculations that Myung didn't even plan on murder with attempted self-exit. Some netizens speculate that she might have gone on to harm more people in the school or other students or colleagues, but it might have been the parenting app that prevented her, because the parenting app kept sending alerts, which Hanner's dad could hear Myung on the other end, forcibly opening Hanner's front zipper off her backpack to turn off the alerts, and then the heavy breathing continued for about another hour. Furthermore, when Grandma Kim opened the door to the storage closet, it didn't appear that Myung was injured, and even after that, she had the energy to lock the door. It seems like she tried to self-exit after she was found by Grandma Kim. Adding to that theory is the fact that her injuries were not life-threatening, but they could be used as evidence that she is mentally unsound, but they were not actually life-threatening.
Really? So it was like
It's hard to say because the intent could be there, but human self-preservation, self-survival could kick in. It's hard to argue, but one other aspect of this theory is that according to Hanner's autopsy, none of her wounds showed any signs of hesitation. So a lot of the times with sometimes stabbing victims, you'll see shallower stab wounds, and then it progressively leads into deeper stab wounds. So you'll see like a varying level of depth of the wounds, but they were all incredibly deep. Many experts don't believe that fits the theory that she was so depressed that she harmed Hanner and then wanted to self-exit. They more or less argue that if that were the case, there would have been some sort of hesitation marks. Another criminologist interviewed on this case focuses on the fact that when Grandma Kim opened the door and asked Myung where Hanner was, she just straight up lied to her face. There was nothing to indicate that she was panicked or nervous. It's not only terrifying that she was able to maintain this calm demeanor, but also it's just a flat out lie of someone trying to cover their tracks. Not someone who had plans to self-exit soon. Soon after this crime takes all over the mainstream media news, Koreans, not just from the Daegu area, but Koreans that have traveled hours, they'd come to drop off chrysanthemum flowers and snacks at the school gates for Hanner. They had these little yellow umbrellas stuck onto the picket fence of the school so that all of the dolls left for Hanner would not get wet. A local florist even gave out 100 chrysanthemum flowers, just hoping to raise more awareness and hoping more locals would go and pay their respects. The flowers, the dolls, they're all left up for like an entire block around the school for Hanner. This is, even to this day, a very big case in South Korea. I know in America we have lots of incidents, and it's still very big cases, but it almost feels like certain people, not saying you or I, but certain people have almost come to expect that a school is not a safe place in America, which is so dangerous and so vile and so depressing on its own. But in Korea, there really was not as many instances of this level of violence. You hear a lot of stories of school bullies, and there's that kind of inter-peer violence, which is still not okay. But to have an 8-year-old killed on school premises,
Yeah, I mean, there was a school
really
shooting like
shocking.
yesterday. I
And
know.
even so, to international audiences. The first day of mourning for the funeral, Haner's family received condolence wreaths from major businesses, local and national soccer teams. They all sent condolence wreaths for Haner. According to someone at the funeral proceedings, there were a lot of members of parliament in the front paying their respects to Haner, including even the acting president of South Korea attended to pay his respects.
Wait,
Now,
President Yoon was there?
no, he is the suspended president. So there is the acting president of South Korea who attended to pay his respects. Now, I will say, this is where a lot of people just thought the case is now going to progress into the trial. But for some reason, this case ends up just taking very bizarre turns and spiraling into something more than what happened and raising awareness so that this never happens again. I was really even debating with the idea of not even including a lot of this in this episode or really condensing it down, but the feeling that I kept getting while going through the online discourse and how the topic changed from Haner to gaming forums to just about everything that has happened in between.
in Dallas
I mean,
High
the
School and another
overwhelming
in
feeling is that we are
FSU.
still living in a world where a victim needs to be perfect, or at least near perfect, in order to deserve sympathy. It's a sick prerequisite society has, and this case I think is such a clear example of that. In this case, it's not the netizens are finding fault with 8-year-old Haner. That would be, even for the internet, a new level of low, but it's the fact that some netizens, which are internet users, are going after Haner's father. Haner's dad used
because
to be
of
a
the
frequent user
app.
of a gaming forum, which was known to be frequented predominantly by men, where maybe 50% of the posts are fun and about games, and the other 50% are jokes probably a lot of women would not find funny. Netizens dug up old posts and comments left behind by Haner's father, who we will refer to as Kim. For example, one person would post a picture writing, A cup weighs the same as a mandarin. B cup weighs persimmons. C cups are apples. D cups are grapefruit. E cups are giant Asian pears. Clearly talking about breast size and how much they weigh. Haner's father comments, my girlfriend is a grapefruit then. If I knew that's how my boyfriend was talking about me on these forums, he would not be my boyfriend anymore. And while it's a rather derogatory comment that's just kind of uncomfortable, it has nothing to do with Haner nor her murder. Because in any event, an 8-year-old was killed for no reason. What does her father's post from 2015 have anything to do with it? A lot of netizens came out, and a lot of Korean netizens came out, started to defend Kim about it, saying, that's a full 10 years ago, and yeah, it's sexist. He should probably reflect on that post, but it's not the most insane thing we've ever read. On top of that, even if the post was even more sexist, should we really be bringing it up now?
Yeah, for
Like, do
real,
we need
that's
to dig into
nothing to do with
everybody's
that.
past digital history? So every person, victim's father, victim, do we need to go down and find every single thing that they wrote from 2015?
Yeah, that's so bizarre.
It just became a huge discourse of how we handle like a lot of the digital footprints of people. And I do think it's very interesting that a lot of society and a lot of cultures still have this prerequisite that a victim's family has to be absolutely perfect in order to deserve sympathy. Because these aren't even the same level. Like, what does that even mean? Now, this is not a great bar to set, but regardless, a more recent post was made in 2019 on a thread asking about contraceptions. Haner's father comments, use contraception well. If you're not careful, you're going to end up with 2 kids like me.
I know I said and
Netizens
did
felt
stuff
this comment
online.
was
I'm not
clearly
too proud, or
harder to
maybe a
overlook.
decade ago,
It's
and half a
recent.
decade
It
ago.
has to
For
do with
real.
his 2 kids. It sounds like he doesn't want kids. It sounds like he doesn't love his kids. That's what a lot of Korean netizens were trying to hint at. Then another post pops up with a new allegation against Kim, an anonymous post with an accusation. Haner's father borrowed $2,500 from an acquaintance of mine to donate to a female streamer, and he never paid it back. He's on welfare. He sent Haner to the after-school program with the government benefits, and he doesn't even work. He goes and he spends all of his time in PC rooms watching female streamers playing games. He was even recently sued for harassing a PC room employee. Pay back the money you owe to my acquaintance, Haner's father. netizens were really confused on how to feel about this random
Dude, it has
accusation
nothing
because
to
there's
do
no proof
with what
provided.
happened.
But also, someone truly, like, you would have to be so morally corrupt to even bring this up and make these accusations at this point in time. Some netizens were saying, if you said this a year later, but it's so fresh after the murder and you're writing these online, it's just weird. Like, what are you trying to gain from this? Is this going to make him pay it back? Are you trying to capitalize off of the attention that Haner's case is getting? Because then you're sick for doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Right now, an 8-year-old has died. Does the acquaintance's borrowed money that he consented to borrow to a friend, does that have anything to do with the story right now?
So why do you think all these people are kind of like attacking or coming up with these stories against him?
I think not to psychoanalyze a whole group of people's reactions online, because maybe we're reading too deep into it, maybe we're not. But my Korean researchers were talking to me, and we had these discussions about sometimes it appears that when a case is pointing out an issue that is too big for these people to even grasp or understand, or it feels like as a citizen of the country, this feels like too big of an issue for me to even make an impact, then we might as well just find fault in the people bringing up the issue. It's kind of the feeling, or I would hope that Koreans are not, I mean, this is a small group of Koreans bringing this up, by the way. Like, most Korean netizens are like, hey, you people are insane for even talking about stuff like this. Like, why are you bringing this up? Why are you going and digging into his old gaming forums? But that small group of people, I don't know what their problem is. I don't know. So if you're wondering how the social discourse went from anger towards the perpetrator to people digging up old posts from the victim's dad and people almost seemingly trying to find dirt on him, I was also really confused. But this case really is frustrating in the sense that when you look for discourse in Korea about this case, you see it go from all about Haner and how to prevent this from happening in another school to lots of online messy allegations and opinions about the victim's father. If you go on American, like English sources of this case, you're not going to find any of that. You go to Korean sources, you're going to find at least half the comments are bringing up Haner's father.
Wow.
In some videos, it's like 90% of the comments are talking about Haner's father.
That's so
And I was
ridiculous.
talking to my Korean researchers, and they said, again, most Koreans are on Haner and Haner's father's side. It's just that, like, the small handful, the small group of people that hate her father for whatever sick reason, they're so loud, they're so vocal. So most of this seems to stem from a series of interviews that Haner's father does after Haner's death. Haner's father does a series of press interviews, which makes sense considering this is one of the more talked about cases in the news cycle at this point. Some netizens decided to find fault with some of the things that he says, or more so the way he says those things in the interviews. For full transparency, I do see how there are moments where his tone or his words he chooses might come off strange if you're not being sympathetic. But I think a lot of Korean netizens have lost the plot. I think they're trying to twist his words and find some way to find fault in him. And I don't know what they get out of doing that. Maybe it's easier to blame her dad rather than thinking about how the education system can be fixed for both teachers and students, because that feels like too big of a problem. Also, who knows? Nobody knows anyone's true intentions, but given what we have, the interviews of the dad, I don't know how people are painting this insane picture of him being one of the most evil people in the world. People are making it seem like he's worse than the perpetrator.
Which is
That's crazy,
insane.
Yeah, every little thing he says has been picked apart, and yes, again, I can see how some of them come off strange when you don't really factor in the nuance and the context of the situation, but keep in mind, this is a man that has never been on the news. He was just plopped into mainstream media in the span of 48 hours, and all the major news networks are shoving cameras in his face, demanding him to make a statement at the same time that the most horrific incident of his life has just happened. He has had no time to process his grief, to consolidate his emotions. He's just trying to share with the world his experience so that this never happens to another kid. He asks in the first interview, please just take 10 seconds to pray so that Haner is happy in heaven. Thank you so much. He bows almost 90 degrees to the reporters, but a lot of netizens, some netizens, okay, I don't want to say a lot, but it sounds like a lot because all the comments. Some netizens are upset and they're saying that he keeps asking people for things. He keeps demanding we give 10 seconds of silence. He then also asks journalists at the end of their articles to write, Haner who became a star, we love you. Let's create Haner's law.
정말 감사하겠습니다.
So he's trying to create a law, and we're going to get into that because that's also controversial. But in another part, he states, I sincerely ask government officials, please create Haner's law so that there won't be a second Haner. As I asked yesterday, I would appreciate if journalists would include the phrase, Haner, adults are sorry, we love you, at the end of your videos or articles.
하늘아 어른들이 미안해, 사랑해라는 문구들을 꼭 넣어주셨으면 좋겠습니다.
Now, I think that this is more done in American news outlets. You don't really see this being done in Korean news outlets. Citizens being like, hey journalists, could you please include this at the end of your article? And I think the way that he's bringing it up is very to the point, which a small group of Korean netizens felt very upset at his quote-unquote demands. They're saying he's demanding too much. Like, why is he going around demanding 10 seconds of silence? I think the feeling that they were trying to convey, I don't know, is that we were going to give 10 seconds of silence, but because you demanded it, we don't want to give it anymore, which is just such a strange sentiment to have. But they're very upset by it. And they're also commenting things like the schools and teachers should feel sorry. But why do all the adults in Korea need to apologize? We're not the ones who did this. Other netizens get quite harsh with their comments, writing, what is this? The dad almost seems excited. And why are the adults of Korea sorry? We're not the ones that forced you to send your kid to aftercare class. So now they're shaming him for sending his kid to aftercare class programs after school, because most parents are double working parents, like they're dual income parents. They don't have the time to just watch their kids. Like most people in Korea send their kids to after school programs. Other comments, don't generalize the actions of one insane evil teacher and her crimes to the entire adult population of the nation. We feel
so
bad, we feel
mean.
grief and heartache, but why do I have to apologize?
It's not.
Which is,
So bizarre.
yeah, it's like not that personal.
Yeah,
but
it's not
I mean,
personal.
again, I was debating on whether to even include this in the episode, but because it's such a prevalent conversation in South Korea, and it's happening in all the Korean articles, they're like fighting in the comments in every single article about Haner, I think it's a great time to try to understand why stuff like this happens. They also point to another moment where he tells the journalist to write, Haner, we love you, Haner, we're sorry. And in their articles, I guess the next day, they hadn't included that. So he asks again in a press conference, why doesn't anyone write it? From what I've seen, there was nothing written.
그리고 마지막에 하늘아 사랑해, 하늘아 미안해.
So a lot of people are upset that he's reading the articles and calling out the journalist for not including what he requested. Then there's another moment where he says, the biggest issue in South Korea right now is the case of Haner. I don't know why it had to be my daughter and why this is happening. Then he excuses himself to calm down before he continues in the interview. So he notices, he's like, okay, I need to calm down. Could I just get a moment?
왜 그게 제 딸이어야 되고 이런 일이 일어나는지 잘 모르겠어요.
I think his words are completely understandable. He is a parent who just lost his child, and this case is massive in South Korea. But some South Korean netizens recently, I mean, they just didn't like what he said. Haner is the biggest case, is like the only big issue in Korea right now, because they're saying recently their president was impeached. So there was a lot going on in the political world that
What does he
impacts all the
care?
nation's
That's not his
citizens.
child.
Some netizens got really offended by his words, which I just think is, have some nuance in your life would be easier. Someone comments, I thought it was a police official giving a briefing, the way that he's saying this is the biggest issue and we should care about it. Others are even speculating, is this really the biological father? He seems like he's not commemorating Haner, but rather fulfilling his own selfish desires.
Like desire of what?
Some people, okay, I'm trying to also see why certain things are happening to try and maybe give a perspective. Clearly, I don't know what it's like to be in that situation, but I do think that there are moments where I have been in front of a camera and I felt really uncomfortable to the point where I don't know why my face is not matching certain words I'm saying. I think it's like I'm nervous, I'm like shaking, I just don't know how to feel, like the adrenaline. And I think at certain points in his press conference, his voice is fast-paced, he doesn't seem sad, emotional, and there's almost like an inflection in his tone that's alert and hyper. And people are taking that as he's so happy to be in front of cameras.
Oh, please.
Yeah.
Wow.
People are so stupid.
Others point out a different moment when Haner's dad is just talking about what it must have been like for his little daughter in her final moments. He says, the sound of me triggering the alarm on the parenting app. How much pain must Haner have been in? She was stabbed dozens of times. If someone had just listened for that sound, my Haner would have been in a lot of pain, but she wouldn't have become a star now. He's saying if someone had heard it, maybe she would be alive. Yes, she would have been in pain because she would still have to heal from the stab wounds, but she also wouldn't become a star. So the way he's saying it is like, it's like very complicated. Like, obviously he doesn't want his daughter to have passed on, but then also the idea of her trying to heal from those stab wounds would have been a lot. But people are just taking the part where he says she wouldn't have become a star as like, oh my god, he wants fame. He wants his daughter to be famous. He also continues, now this adds context. The crime could have happened to anyone, but Haner became a star first for her friends, for the elementary school students who will live in Korea in the future. That is how I will think about it. That's a huge part that has been taken out of the context by some of these Korean netizens. One sentiment that Haner's father has held since the beginning of all of this is that had it not been Haner that day, it would have been another kid. That teacher was not going to stop until she killed a kid. That is his belief. That's a lot of people's beliefs. He finds comfort in the fact that he could try to see it as his daughter saved another child. She became a star, and the reason he uses star is not like she became famous. Haner's name means sky in Korean. So it's like, so a lot of people are saying she's now in the
Shining.
sky, and
Shining
then
in
she's
the
a
sky.
star in the sky. So he's saying it in that sense and not fame. And it's very clear, like everybody knows the word sky in Korea. Like if these netizens can type out their hateful comments, they know what the word means. They know what her name means. So clearly the context is there, but they decide to just bypass it, and they're like, he's obsessed with becoming famous.
It sounds like they feel like his reaction doesn't match with what they think a
Yes.
victim's father should act like or say in these type of situation, and now they are having a moment of like casting their own whatever
Yes.
on this father.
It's one of those situations where I feel it's very easy for people to say things like people respond to shock and grief in different ways, but then when they see it play out, they don't like it.
Yeah.
I think I would be a little bit more understanding of some tiny bit of netizens if there were a lot of suspicious elements of the case where it feels like maybe the father had involvement, but it's like so cut and dry. Like, why are we even doing this right
For
now?
real.
It doesn't even make sense.
It doesn't.
Some netizens have painted this narrative that he is someone that loves being famous and loves being on TV, writing, he seems so excited now that he's getting attention. Or no matter how I look at it, he doesn't seem sad. He just seems like someone who's enjoying the situation and wants to look good to reporters and entertain them. It is sufficiently bizarre. And, quote, the father was unique from the beginning of the situation. Rather than feeling sad about losing a child, he's specifically demanding certain words be used at the end of articles, demanding the nation give 10 seconds of silence. It's bizarre. Rather than taking care of his wife and his other daughter, he's just doing all these disturbing interviews. Now, one thing to note is that he says that the police were barely telling him updates on this case. He was finding out about it online. It seems very natural then that he would constantly be reading articles.
Hey, I was
waiting to
watching-
see
oh,
if the
my
police
bad.
are going to release more information. That's why I'm saying it's not that strange that he noticed that the reporters didn't include that at the end of the articles. He straight up says, I haven't been told anything about the investigation process by the police. I asked the detective supervisor, and the news articles like this are coming out. I said, Detective supervisor, what are these news articles? Please tell me the investigation status, and they won't. Another thing to add to all of this is some netizens said that he's been very demanding. He's demanding idols, politicians, police officers show up and pay respects to Haner. He's demanding nations pray for 10 seconds. I think these are all requests. They're not demands.
Yeah,
but most netizens, they can see how angry he is with the police. The reason that he's, quote, demanding them to show up at Haner's funeral, and maybe this can enlighten those nasty netizens that hate the father for no reason. He says, quote, the police officers investigating Haner, the prosecutor who came to see Haner, not a single one of them came to pay respects, on top of the fact that nobody's telling him information about this case. He's saying it's just confusing. Many ordinary people I don't even know have come from all across the country. Citizens of Korea have come to pay respects to Haner. And I think, side note, pay respects maybe to some people sounds demanding, but that's like what you do at a funeral. You pay respects. But he's saying, like, you know, they came to say hi to Hunter. They came to show their respect and send her off. Like, he's using these types of terms. 3 police officers unrelated to the case, they came. They hugged me and they cried with me. They said they were sorry that they couldn't protect Hunter. There are people like that, but how can those in charge of the case not come to pay their respects? Someone should be stationed here to inform me in real time, as I'm the one who needs to know the news the fastest. But why do I have to learn all about the investigation through news articles? Of course, I don't know if the articles are true or not. All citizens will know about it through the news articles, and I don't even know if it's true. So, another thing to note, there have been lots of fake news spread by some journalists saying that Hanner's father had mentioned he wanted to meet with the perpetrator one day, how he wanted to meet with the perpetrator's family one day, to which he all put those rumors to rest. But that's why he's even more frustrated. He has to learn about his own daughter's investigation through media outlets, and some of them are reporting false news about him that he knows is false. So now everything that comes out about Hanner, he's like, I don't know if that's even true. And the police won't talk to me. Not only that, they won't even pay their respects to the 8-year-old girl who was killed. Like, this is crazy. He's like expressing frustration. But some netizens have complained, saying he's asking to be treated like a VIP.
Bro.
They're saying most officers do not
breathing.
attend victims' funerals. It's just not in protocol. And some say his tone comes off very entitled, writing, rather than being angry at the perpetrator, he's angry at all Koreans that did not come to pay condolences. That anger is stronger for the father. It is very bizarre. Or another comment that reads, the dad is unusual. He is counting condolences rather than focusing on getting justice. Others argue that it's reasonable to be upset. I mean, learning updates through the media, the fake news, it makes sense. And even if it doesn't make sense, he's a grieving father. One big part that Korean netizens have also been ripping to shreds into Hanner's father is at the end of one press conference, he tells the reporters, I should wrap this up. I won't be taking any more questions. There's really nothing else to film right now. I've done all the interviews.
Hold on, I think my mom's screaming at my
Reporters,
cat. Hold on.
please go upstairs. We
Mute.
prepared meals for you. Go upstairs and eat.
기자님도 올라가셔서 다 식사 준비해놨거든요, 기자님들도. 올라가서 식사를 해요.
His tone sounds, from what netizens say, it sounds very light. Now, side context, in another interview inside the funeral home, he says, reporters, the serving staff are coming out a bit late, but you really don't need to give monetary gifts.
Shut
Please
up,
put
you
down your
actually heard
cameras and
that?
Pray for Hanner. Put down your cameras, go greet her, help her go beautifully.
When
And
your
please
mom
make
was
sure
like,
to eat. I'm sure
probably the
everybody's having
cat.
a hard time right now. When the serving staff come, please eat before you go. This is the last meal our daughter Hanner is treating you guys to. The reporters, right? She's like your niece, right? Eat your niece's last meal and head home. Thank you, everyone. Some netizens comment, are there any other questions? Like quoting him, are there any questions? I'll conclude for now. Reporters, please go find food upstairs. It feels like he's a third party rather than a bereaved family member. Others comment, he excitedly tells his heroic tales and then he says he prepared meals for reporters. It's like a press conference with a celebrity's manager. Maybe I like to overthink someone's emotional state, but it feels, okay, again, I don't know. I can't read minds, but from what I can gather, one thing to note culturally is in Korea, when you go to a funeral, there typically is food served and you're supposed to eat. It's like one last meal. And then you do give monetary gifts when you walk in to pay condolences to the family. So it's like you lost a family member. You're probably taking off work. You probably had to pay for this funeral. Let me help in any way that I can monetary wise. Perhaps he saw reporters crying because this is an emotional case that a lot of Koreans were affected by. I'm sure a lot of these reporters have young kids. Maybe he saw some of them emotional when the cameras were off. It's not like they're recording each other. Maybe he saw them all trying to donate and he's like, no, please don't donate. Truly, like, I didn't ask you to come here to donate. I just wanted you to send Hanner off. Like, I just wanted people to draw attention to this case so it never happens again. And then maybe he's trying to lift up spirits because the reporters are also emotional. Like, even him saying, you know, she's like your niece, right? Like, this is one last meal from your niece. It almost sounds like he's trying to be like, it's okay, everyone. We're all going to get through it. But the fact that a lot of netizens, they just end up taking it such a weird way. It's just very complicated, and I just don't think that we know anything about it. And it just feels like if we're not seeing the perfect picture of the perfect victim's family, a lot of people are losing sympathy, which I find to be really disturbing. He also says in another interview, I don't know politics. I want the highest officials in our country to come see Hanner. I want them to listen to my story directly. I want to receive that promise. That is why I requested it. I think he is justified in his anger. I mean, you could argue that he's very smart about trying to get action and laws passed immediately. He knows if he requests and pressures politicians to show up and listen to his story, they can't just ignore him, act like they didn't see it. But I think the way that he words it, I guess, rubbed some netizens the wrong way. They just did not like it. The acting president did attempt. Now, which leads me to the next point of contention in this case, the proposed Haner law. Haner's father is working on a law being
That's
passed
what I was
that will
curious
make it so
about.
that teachers with mental health issues will receive necessary treatment and need to be cleared in order to continue teaching. The newly proposed Haner law would change teachers' psychological tests, the way that they're evaluated, and would force mandatory leave if there are any signs that a teacher is mentally unfit.
I mean,
In order for Myung to come back
feel
to
like that
school
should be
20 days into her sick leave, she had to have a doctor's note.
like the norm.
So they wrote, yes, she's good. She's good after 20 days. That is kind of strange. People are saying that is very strange. Additionally, children in after-school programs would be required to have hand-to-hand pickups. So instead of letting her go out of the classroom, walk all the way down to the first floor, a teacher would have to escort her from the classroom and hand-to-hand pass her off to whoever is picking her up. That is what the bill is so far proposing. In
That's a
concept,
bit
the law would
much,
create a system in
but-
which teachers will be allowed mandatory leave when struggling with their mental health, protecting teachers, protecting students, and even the Deputy Prime Minister has gotten behind the proposal of the law, saying we will establish measures to make it mandatory to confirm the possibility of normal work upon reinstatement, with most netizens agreeing that something needs to be done. Like, clearly something needs to be done. And for this case specifically, they think this happened on school grounds. She choked out a colleague 4 days prior. She was on medical leave. They knew about her depression. Like, clearly something needs to be done. Haner's family probably needs to be compensated as well financially for everything that they've lost. But it's just for this specific case, yes, something needs to be done. However, the Haner law is highly controversial. Also, keep in mind, whatever people are saying about the Haner law is not about Haner. She did absolutely nothing wrong, and this portion of the discourse is not even necessarily about her or what happened to her, but rather the discourse of what will happen if this law is put into effect. This is not an excuse, this is not reasoning for Myung. She deserves the highest level of punishment, but a lot of people are really worried about this bill being passed. Many netizens think it's not well thought out enough, like we're rushing into it. They also believe it's only good in concept. First, they point to the invasion of teachers' privacy. It would create situations in which the law could be easily used against them and their mental health becomes very intertwined with their working ability, which could actually further exacerbate their mental health.
Yeah.
Obviously not Myung. She should not be at work. But for other teachers who are like, okay, I want to seek treatment for my mental health, but I'm scared the school will find out and then I will be placed on mandatory leave. Also, the law would make it easier that a student could report a teacher for being mentally ill, which many have stated would kind of be inappropriate for a minor student to determine whether a teacher is mentally fit or not to begin with. But they could also report a teacher for being mentally ill, and it would instantly trigger a series of actions that results in the teacher forced out of work and potentially their job being put at risk. Let's be real. The reason that this is concerning is teachers in South Korea, and I'm sure like teachers everywhere, they're underpaid, overworked. In South Korea, though, they're typically the victims of abuse. The teachers. They are typically bullied by students and students' parents. In a Korean classroom, it's safe to assume the student holds the most authority, because if a student lies and accuses a teacher of doing anything to them, the parent can file a formal complaint, and almost always the school takes the parent's side. One interview on the street, citizens were asked how much authority do teachers have in South Korea. They said, I think absolutely
There's a
none.
bunch of webtoon with that premise.
If
Yeah.
a teacher tries to do anything in an attempt to teach, a parent doesn't like it, they can get a complaint, and it's almost to the point where they can't even actually educate students anymore. The authority of the teachers at this country has hit a rock bottom. I think there's something seriously wrong with the education system.
Yeah.
Others state that they have read news stories where female teachers have their own personal Instagrams that parents will go out of their way to stalk. I mean, nobody asks you to go find your kids' teachers on Instagram. And if the teacher goes on vacation or goes out to dinner with friends on the weekend and the parents don't like what she's wearing, they will file a formal complaint and the teacher will be reprimanded.
Bro, teachers have life out
At
of
school
school.
for what she does off hours. And like, side note, knowing Korean culture, I bet it was like a modest dress with 2 inches of shoulders showing.
Yeah.
Another citizen on the street says, it's like the teacher's personal life should not exist.
Yeah, for
South
real.
Korea right now, because the education system is so competitive, a lot of parents feel that their kids can make no mistakes. It's also my kid first, my kid first. It's very a selfish
screw your
system
kid.
where if the kid is not doing well in that class, maybe it's the teacher's fault. Let's move the teacher out of there and get a new teacher in so my
No,
kid
it's
can do
your
well. Even
kid's
if all
pea
the other
brain.
kids are doing great, I don't care because it's about my kid.
So even in China too, right? Like, because my aunt is a teacher her whole
Yeah.
life. When a parent thinks that their kid is not doing well, they will do whatever it takes, even if it means that let's get this teacher off to get a different teacher.
Let's
so,
get her
So
fired.
annoying.
Yeah, so I can totally see that happen because how much weight they put on the education, you know.
Yeah. And just last year, there were widespread teacher protests. Parents will accuse teachers of child abuse if they even restrain a violent student. There are videos of students slapping teachers.
Yeah, I've seen
in
those.
class. Or if a teacher tells a student they're disrupting the class to be quiet, they can be accused of emotional abuse. One example, a teacher took away reward stickers because the student with the reward stickers tried to attack another student with a pair of scissors. So they took away the reward stickers because you don't get a reward for being violent. And formal complaints were filed by the parents, which then in turn the administration reprimanded the teacher. Teachers are saying they don't even feel safe to teach at this point. And within a span of a week in 2024, multiple teachers in South Korea self-exited. A few of them
Jesus.
on school grounds,
Oh my god.
drawing attention to the very broken education system, as well as over 100 teachers have self-exited in the past 5 years in South Korea. One of the victims who self-exited had been bullied by parents at the school for just trying to teach and discipline the kids. She wrote in her diary that every time she even enters a classroom, she feels, quote, "My chest feels too tight. It feels like I'm gonna fall somewhere. I don't even know where I am."
That's
The
ridiculous.
23-year-old has PTSD, like from entering a classroom because of the bullying she faced from the students' parents.
Like, at this point, they're just not gonna want to
She's found
teach.
dead in her classroom by her colleagues, which triggered a 200,000 teacher protest in front of the National Assembly. One teacher was commenting on a news report. Look at this. Like, the teachers are not here to protest for a raise or for a better system to benefit themselves. We're just asking that the government protect teachers from unfair situations that are brought upon by students and by students' parents. We Korean teachers only want the right to teach. That's it,
Yeah.
without worrying about things that have nothing to do with education. That's all we want. With another comment reading, I worked in a Korean school once and it was so bad. Teachers quit every year and had meltdowns in the bathrooms. Some students would even falsely accuse teachers to get them in trouble out of spite.
And plus, we talked about a lot, like when you're under, 14?
Bunch
or
of little
something,
brats.
Like, there's literally no consequences.
Oh yeah, that
for
that's
anything, so they
disgusting.
can just go crazy.
Yeah. So people are saying, yes, the teachers, if they're not mentally fit, they should not be around students. And especially for this case, but like future cases, if they're showing any violent tendencies, if anything is happening, yeah, they need to be either let go, fired, in jail, in a mental ward, something needs to happen to them. They're not safe for society. But this law leaves a lot to be open. It's like a further restraint on these teachers. With one comment reading, I hope this act will be used properly and not abused by some brat-spoiled bully kids who are a menace in their home, schools, and society. I mean, I hope the kids who should be protected are protected by this act, but you don't know how to make sure of that. There's gonna be people who are gonna use it to their benefit. Also, there are concerns that there might be a lot of stigmatization against mental health. If a teacher is out on medical leave because some action triggered her to be forced on a forced medical leave because someone saw her unfit, you really think they're gonna let her back? Like, these are the types of parents we're dealing with that took away reward stars because your kid
There's
is
the
a
webtoon
violent
I read
offender?
a while back where the
You
government
think they're
animated
gonna let her
agency
back?
for teachers where they're
Any
able to
of
hit
these
the
teachers are
students
gonna have
back,
their
something
jobs
along
back?
the lines of that. Now it makes sense.
I'm sure
Yeah,
we
they
can
could
put
read
into
it
place
too.
a law, but it just seems like conceptually it's great. And nobody is criticizing Hanner's father. He's not a lawmaker. This is not his job. Something happened and his main focus is making sure this doesn't happen to another kid. It is up to the lawmakers, however, to revise it and word it and to add clauses in a way that it also protects the teachers. But it doesn't seem like they're doing that right now. Also, even the hand-to-hand drop-off, a lot of teachers are kind of upset by this because the fact that these programs were put in place where a lot of parents could pay I think it's like $60 for 11 weeks of the after-school program, which is like no money at all, honestly, when you think about childcare and like staying in a program. And the government's not hiring more teachers. That's what they promised when they implemented these after-school programs in schools. They said, we're going to specifically hire after-school program teachers, but they don't. So the teachers that come in at 5, 6 in the morning and teach all day,
They're the
they
same.
do after-school programs, and then after that, they have to revise their lesson plans, grade homework, and then do they're working 14, 16-hour days. And so they're like, now you want to add more teachers to do hand-to-hand drop-offs and pickups, and it's like you want to protect the kids because you don't want the teachers to be mentally unwell, but it's also the system that's causing teachers to be mentally unwell. So if you just fix that, not saying Myung would have not committed the crime. She, I think, would have probably committed a crime regardless of her occupation, regardless of where she was working. But still, it's like all the other teachers, it seems very complicated. And then this discourse of what happened to Haner goes off the deep end once more when a far-right political commentary cartoonist, it's a loaded job title, but he posts a whole online article asking, is a child's death an achievement? He writes, they always want to create things like this. Does it make them feel better to have a law named after their child? Is the child's death their only achievement in life?
Bro, that is not.
Which is an insane thing to even say, but it did make this whole situation even worse because now we are one step further away from Haner's death and trying to enact change. Because of his far-right political standing, the comment section turned fully into a right versus left fight. And again, it's like we have lost the plot once more. But one netizen does point out, and I do agree with this, again, regardless of how one feels of if the Haner bill is going to help or hurt the system, I do think that there's lots of changes that could be made to it to benefit the teachers and the students and the parents and have a better educational system. But one thing to note is, quote, I admire that Haner's dad wants a law to enact to help educators with mental illnesses, whether you think it's going to work or not. But the fact that he wants to help them rather than punish them, what he and his family have been through, that takes tremendous heart. It is really sad to see that Haner's entire life has become overshadowed, first by how she passed, and then also by netizens digging into her dad's past and all of these different conversations that are now being had. A lot of Haner's classmates have tried to keep her as she was in her memories. Everyone says she's a really bright girl, and that even at 8 years old, this is the age where people start testing boundaries, but Haner just did everything with a very positive attitude. She never complained in school. She never complained about her extracurriculars. She was always excited to take on more. She loved soccer. She joined this local soccer club, and she was so enthusiastic. She was actually so good. She would play with people that were older than her, and she would call them 언니. So when the 언nis would tell her, we gotta go to 회식, which is like after work dinner, company dinner, which normally adults hate. But she's like, I gotta go. I gotta show up and show them that I support the team. And she was just always so excited to try more and to do new things. And she would just like run full speed in soccer, but also when her parents would pick her up from her after school program, people always remember seeing her run full speed straight towards her parents and just almost tackle them with a hug. And many of her friends and family have sent her off with well wishes, saying, just like your name, play happily in heaven without fear, to our Haner, to our sky, who departed on a happy heavenly journey. As for Myung, she is now facing murder charges, but South Korea hasn't technically abolished the death penalty. But considering it's been almost like 30 years since their last execution, it seems the likelihood of her facing capital punishment is slim, but a lot of Korean netizens are calling for capital punishment. Nevertheless, she is facing life imprisonment for kidnapping, luring, and murdering a minor under 13.
At least.
And that is where the case of Haner from South Korea is. I know in a lot of the English sources and media, there wasn't a lot of discourse of everything that was happening afterwards, but what are your thoughts? It just seems like it's spiraled into a lot of different things. Let me know. Be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Oh dang, that one was hard and heavy, huh? Aren't they all? Yeah, but I always feel like when it's a child, like a palette cleanser now. No. That's just the music. Well, we hit the 2-hour mark. Basically, 2 or 30 minutes, really, but. Yar. Actually, maybe. But you owe me for not streaming yesterday. What are you talking about? It's my off day. I don't stream Thursday. What? I did not know that. What do you mean? I've been doing it, like, since I started to stream. What are you on about? Thought it was just weekends. No, it's Thursdays and the weekends. I do it because usually something always comes up on Thursday with my mom, so like whether it's appointments or just appointments, but yeah, like, well, now I know. I thought you knew. Like, if you, like, okay, whatever. You know what, Carno, whatever. Let me see, actually, if we can find a palette cleanser. Because that would actually make sense. I didn't notice things like that. Well, that sounds like a you problem. I want chips. I want snackies. Give me some money so I can go get some snacks. I'm gonna go to the dollar store. I actually have a whole bowl of chips next to me. Give me... What? Wait, pause. What type of chips? All spicy. Oh, gimme, please. Just a handful, please. Takis and other stuff. Oh, please, my mouth is watering, please. I'm not joking, please. I want, please. Why aren't you responding? Say yes. Funny thing is, I can't even finish. I hate you. I can finish them. Give me. Give it. Bro, I'm scrolling through my YouTube and all for palette cleanser, and it's mostly crime stuff. I'm too full from pizza. My brother ordered them earlier. And a few Stardew Valley stuff. Give, please. My chips was on diet all week long. I don't do diets. I hate diets. I only do them when the doctor tells me to, but that's literally why I hate them in the first place. I hate them too, but I gotta lose weight, man. Nah, or I'd rather just do a bunch of exercise. Love food too much. That's exactly it. Like, I want to eat what I want to eat. Like, I used to have my middle school gym teacher was, she was like, I eat the fattiest of foods and I eat whatever I want. But she was like fit, and she was like, I just work out, so I never have to worry about, you know, my food intake. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm working out with my mom too. Good job. Keep at it. I need to hit the gym. Not gonna lie. Yeah, I should hit the gym, but the laziness seeps into my bones. Also, it's starting to get hot, and I hate the heat, and I don't want to do anything when it's hot. Like, my weight is around 250, 260, but since I'm like over 6 feet, I don't look that overweight. Oh, gotcha. Yeah, tall people always have that advantage. Are you actually over 6 foot? Because that means, you know, I'm not hanging out with you anymore. I get intimidated by like tall people. Nah, I feel like you're gonna step on me. I'm 5'1". Like, one of my brothers is super tall too. I think I was in middle school and then measured me to be 6 feet. Dang, bro. Long bean. Ah, the Mexican person. Tall men, short women. Oh, come on. I've seen so many short men. And they're all Mexican too, so. But bruh, like, I don't want to be stepped on. I feel like you'll step on me. Like, it's creepy. I mean, 5'1" ain't that short. Yeah, it's not, but... It's not, but, you know. I am still short for a Mexican lady. Like, they're average. How's the weather down there? Oh. It's raining. How you like that? It's gonna spit up at you. How dare you use that joke on me? How dare you? I'm leaving because of that, yeah. It's not, yeah, I'm not leaving because it's time. I'm leaving because you said that. Yeah. Alright. You might be as tall as my mom. Watch your shins. I'm gonna kick them. And she is short. Oh. Shut up. Okay, whatever. I'm leaving. Ugh. I like this. Assuming you even reached my shins. Excuse you, what do you mean? Oh, that's it. Yeah, no, we're I hope your dog latches on to your wee wee, and then he death rolls like a alligator. Yeah. Maybe you can ride my chihuahua like a horse. Yeah, that chihuahua specifically, I hope they latch on and then death roll. Yeah, how's that? How's that? Maybe not my wee. Why was wee wee censored? That's so funny. Oh my goodness. Oh. Okay, whatever. Okay, I'm leaving. Bye bye, munchies. Bye bye, this one guy. I need that thing. No, you don't.